All right, good evening, everyone. We've just lost half of the city manager's office. Are we allowed to start without them? Yes, okay, I got the word from on high. So we've come out of closed session, and we'll resume with the public part of our meeting, and we will start with a report out from closed session.
Items 1A, 1B, 1D, and 1F were discussed with no reportable action taken. Item 1C is an amicus brief request. The City of Chicago brought this lawsuit challenging new conditions imposed by the U.S. Department of Justice on the Burn JAG law enforcement grant program. The conditions deny federal funds to so-called sanctuary jurisdictions. The district court enjoined enforcement of the conditions, and the U.S. Department of Justice has appealed. The city has been asked to join the National League of Cities, the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the City of Los Angeles, and others in signing an amicus brief in support of the City of Chicago's position that the U.S. Department of Justice conditions should be enjoined.
I move that we sign that.
All right, moved by McEwen, seconded by Himlich. I believe we can do this by voice vote. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Item 1E is Marinello versus City. Mr. Marinello brought this lawsuit after tripping and falling on a sidewalk displacement on Washington Avenue. Mr. Marinello has claimed that he suffered a broken left kneecap and sprained right wrist as a result of the accident. The city attorney's office recommends settlement in the amount of $20,000.
Move settlement. Second.
All right, moved settlement for that particular litigation in the amount of $20,000 by Mayor Pro Tem Davis, seconded by Councilmember Hemorich, and that will require a roll call vote.
Councilmember Kuhn,
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez,
Yes.
Councilmember Hemorich,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis.
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connor.
Yes.
And Mayor Winter.
Yes, so that passes unanimously of the 6 of us here.
And that concludes the closed session report.
All right, thank you for that. And before we get on with the rest of the business before us, I have a statement to read. The recent arrest of a city employee has raised legitimate concern in our community from this council and from our city staff. So I want to provide a brief announcement on what we know and are able to share. Our hearts go out to anyone impacted by these deeply disturbing circumstances. And I want to acknowledge the bravery of any and all victims that come forward to report sexual misconduct. Earlier this year, the Santa Monica Police Department received an anonymous tip about an alleged crime involving Mr. Eric Uhler, a city employee working in the Information Services Department. Our police immediately followed up and was able to identify the victim. To ensure a completely independent investigation, the information was immediately turned over to the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department Special Victims Unit for investigation. The Sheriff's Special Victims Unit pursued the investigation, and on Thursday, the Sheriff's Department arrested Mr. Ewert. Yesterday, the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office filed criminal charges. Mr. Ewert is charged with 6 counts alleging illegal sexual conduct with 4 minors, 3 under the age of 14 and one under the age of 18. The illegal conduct is alleged to have occurred between December 1986 and September 1995, while Mr. Ewert was volunteering with the city's Police Activities League program. Mr. Ewert's arraignment on the charges was postponed to November 5th, and he is currently being held in custody with bail set at $750,000. The District Attorney's Office has stated that the criminal investigation remains ongoing. Mr. Ewert was placed on administrative leave immediately upon his arrest, pending resolution of the charges. The city will continue to cooperate fully with the Sheriff's Department and the District Attorney's Office as the matter proceeds. We encourage anyone with information related to this investigation to contact the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department Special Victims Bureau at 877-710-5273 or by email at specialvictimsbureau@lasd.org. The Special Victims Bureau contact information is also posted on the city website. Our unwavering focus as a city is to ensure the safety and well-being of each and every one of the thousands of young people who participate in the city's youth programs in our libraries, parks, community centers, and school campuses. From what we know right now, the reported incidents are alleged to have taken place 2 decades ago. Nonetheless, we are actively reviewing our current procedures and records to be sure we are doing everything we can to give parents and community members confidence in our vigilance and reporting procedures. Over the last several days, there have been allegations that the city may have been aware of the criminal conduct by Mr. Ewert and failed in the past to address it. We take this concern seriously. We are committed to transparency and accountability. The city's attorney's office is retaining outside counsel to conduct a comprehensive investigation of these allegations and to comprehensively review the procedures in place to protect youth participants in the PAL program. As your mayor, as a fellow community member, and as a parent, I'm devastated by the events that have unfolded over the past several days. We will strive to find all the facts while continuing to cooperate with all elements of law enforcement, protect the civil and human rights of all concerned, and work to ensure our community is stronger and healthier because of our efforts. And with that, could the clerk call the next item on the agenda, please?
Item 2A is Proclamation National Disabilities Employment Awareness Month.
Welcome. Maureen?
Sorry.
Hi, how are you? now there's an awkward pause while I open the envelope. It's sort of like the Oscars. Except I think we know what the outcome is. It's definitely La La Land. All right. Whereas the City of Santa Monica is recognizing National Disability Employment Awareness Month this October to raise awareness about employing people with disabilities and to celebrate the many and varied contributions of people with disabilities in the workforce. And whereas the City of Santa Monica, along with cities across America, promotes this year's national theme, America's Workplace, Empowering All, and the full participation of more than 60 million American children and adults with disabilities. And whereas Santa Monica Workplaces welcoming the talents of people with disabilities is critical in reducing the 8% unemployment rate for people with disabilities, building a strong local economy, an inclusive community, and ensuring that our residents are thriving in all aspects of community life. And whereas Disabilities Employment Awareness Month is a time for citizens, government, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools to recommit to advancing the important message that people with disabilities are equal to the task throughout the year. Now, therefore, I, Ted Winterer, Mayor of the City of Santa Monica, on behalf of the members of the City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of October to be National Disability Employment Awareness Month. You can applaud now. And Marielle from the Disabilities Commission, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, I would like to. Thank you so much. Thank you. I received this proclamation on behalf of the Santa Monica Disabilities Commission and people with disabilities in Santa Monica. I would like to say that in a democracy, everyone should be able to participate in contributing to the economy. However, only 21% of people with disabilities are employed compared to 68% of other people who do not have disabilities. We need to empower employers to hire people with disabilities into meaningful professional opportunities. We need to create internships and mentoring relationships that advance people with disabilities into aspired careers. We need to do more than acknowledge the issue. We need to challenge the community of employers to develop initiatives for diversity and inclusion. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's give Marielle a big hand.
And Mayor, next we have 2B is the City Manager Report, update on minimum wage enforcement.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Stephanie Lazicki. I'm a Principal Analyst in the Finance Department. I'm here with Jennifer Taylor, the city's Economic Development Administrator, and Even Shen is going to jump in with us as well. We're representing Team Minimum Wage. So we're here to provide you a brief update on the minimum wage law's implementation. And this is a follow-up to a more detailed report that we sent you as an information item in July. As you'll recall, Council adopted our minimum wage law in July of it was effective July of 2016. As you can see in our nice graphic here, it's going to be $15 an hour in 2020. That's for our large businesses. Everyone will be at 15 in 2021. This is the same wage rate and schedule as the City of Los Angeles and LA County. Santa Monica also established a different hotel wage at this point to match the City of LA. In addition to our wage, Santa Monica's law provides paid sick leave benefits and ensures that service charge revenue goes to workers providing the service. So that was in 2016. Starting our third year of implementation, here's where we are. Businesses with 26 or more Santa Monica employees are at $13.25 an hour, and smaller businesses at $12 an hour. Our hotel workers get $16.10 an hour, which is, again, the same as the City of LA. And for paid sick leave, at our second and final phase, large businesses provide 72 hours, and small businesses 40. And for both the wage rate and the paid sick leave, the City of Santa Monica is ahead of the state of California. So we've been quite busy over the past 2 and a little bit years. We've set up an education and outreach program. We've established an enforcement mechanism, And we've also set up a dedicated minimum wage website with our information and a dedicated email to respond to questions from businesses, from our workers, and from the public.
So I'm going to talk about a couple brief highlights from our community outreach efforts. The City of Santa Monica partnered with 3 community-based partners who led and assisted in the education and outreach campaign, both to inform businesses of their obligations under the new minimum wage law and the workers of their rights. We entered into 2-year contracts with these 3 organizations listed here. They were selected through a competitive procurement process. Restaurant Opportunity Center LA focused and worked specifically with workers in the restaurant sector, as the name applies. Korean Immigrant Workers Alliance does a lot of outreach with workers across the region and was also LA County's lead partner in the minimum wage effort. So we felt there are a lot of good opportunities for synergies to promote awareness about the wage laws throughout the county and the region. And then Leandrews Group was our partner who focused on outreach efforts to our business community. Approximately 2,900 businesses and nearly 4,000 Santa Monica workers were engaged directly as a result of these efforts. We also did outreach through over 16,000 businesses through business license mailers. Variety of outreach efforts were tested and used throughout this period. The most effective outreach we found for businesses was doing direct mailers, particularly things in conjunction with our business license and our annual renewals to the businesses. We also found, though, that door-to-door interaction and emails and phone calls through Leandrews Group were also very important in continuing to communicate the message, particularly some of our business sectors that have a high turnover in manager staff. That ongoing outreach was important. For workers, the most effective outreach methods by far were engaging on public transit. So in this case, we had Rock and Kiwa did a lot of outreach, riding the Expo Light Rail trains, riding the 720 bus up and down Wilshire Corridor, talking to folks as they're waiting for the trains to come, and also on the Big Blue Bus, the number 7 route in particular. We also found that we did ads on the transit lines, which helped. Social media was also used and effective, and a number of different outreach tools, including paycheck inserts, which were distributed by our outreach workers to both at the transit stops and also at site visits to the workers was good, because they were things that they could fold up and put in their pockets and share with their colleagues. And pictured here, this is Hunter Hall. He was part of the Leandrews Group and also part of our minimum wage working group. And he did a lot of outreach with businesses and also works on behalf of several businesses here. So we worked a lot to have our businesses and our partners help communicate the message about the wage laws.
So with respect to enforcement, the city is partnered with the Los Angeles County Department of Consumer Affairs, the Wage Enforcement Unit, and that partnership has been a very successful partnership. We've entered into a contract where I believe the unit does essentially the entirety of the enforcement. They're essentially the code enforcement division for wage for the city of Santa Monica. That unit has started out with lots of education and training, but has moved into a more proactive enforcement stance starting probably sometime this year, and more so as we move out of the 2-year education period or education focus period and targeting specific complex enforcement issues and really going to task on them. For the 2-year period, we prosecuted 4 significant cases that were either referred to us or we handled in partnership. Those 4 cases resulted in 60 employees receiving significant wages as restitution. The penalties and the back wages that are assessed are before you, and the numbers that show 94% collection for penalties and 78% collection so far for back wages. That's only the reason it's not 100% at the moment is because a lot of the employers are on payment plans, and the employers are current on all of their payment plans, and we do expect 100% collection on both. And I want to point out that that's a very significant number. About 2 years ago, city staff and county staff went to a statewide wage enforcement conference, and one of the hardest parts that was mentioned in the conference by statewide partners is that the collection rates are well below 50%. Some of them are in single digits, which called into question whether or not the wage programs that were implemented by local jurisdictions were really having an impact on people's real lives. As you can see in Santa Monica, we're able to do that, and we're able to do that successfully. And this is just to go through a standard process for members of the public who may be interested in how, and I'll use the shorthand DCBA for the county, how DCBA handles cases for the city of Santa Monica. There are essentially two paths to DCBA. One where there's simply questions, either by employees or businesses. They'll call in and say, how do I pay this employee? Or an employee might say, am I receiving the right wages, the right sick leave, and they will receive counseling. Another path is when either an effective person or even a public member who just wants to call in and report violations. Those violations are investigated by DCBA somewhat consistently with how regulatory matters are investigated, for example, by your code enforcement division here in PCD. The DCBA process goes through a relatively rigorous interview and documentation process. They'll go through a compliance process. Generally, matters are resolved either through administrative citations or counseling, and if those are unavailing or if the violations are serious, are referred to our office for prosecution. And some of the cases we prosecuted are demonstrated on the slide before.
And I'm just going to share some communication metrics from the wage campaign. So we had 3 milestones we were working towards. The first was announcing the launch of the minimum wage that went into effect on July 1st, 2016. And then second one, the annual increase that started on July 1st, 2017. And then our paid sick leave requirements that went into effect starting on January 1st, 2017. And then again in 2018. So here's some ways that we've helped to measure the impacts in terms of outreach. As Stephanie mentioned, we have a dedicated minimum wage web page. And here we've had nearly 60,000 page views on our website. The webpage also has a resource toolkit of information both for our businesses as well as for workers to download, and legal notices in 10 different languages. And what's helpful to us is by monitoring the downloads, we can see which tools and resources are most effective, what people are wanting, also what languages they're downloading in. So that's been very helpful. In addition, we developed a series of videos in partnership with City TV. We aired them on the city's social media channels as well as in partnership with our community outreach partners. We also shared them with some local partners, the Santa Monica Chamber of Commerce, Santa Monica Travel and Tourism, our business improvement districts. The first video that we did, which is on the minimum wage, had nearly 7,000 video views. And then the second one we did, which is on paid sick leave, which a lot of people have had questions about just because it's different, and trying to understand what the law says and what it means in terms of benefits. That was great. We had nearly 25,000 paid sick leave video views to date. We did boost those a bit more, so that might explain the big increase. But I think that's something that people are very much interested in, the content. And then we work closely with City of Santa Monica's communication department, our colleagues on media outreach, Constance and Debbie Lee and our team, to do press releases, and so that talks about the media mentions and the reach that we've had through that. And then, real quickly, just to show you some examples. So these are campaign graphics that we've used consistently across the web page, on flyers, on social media. And then the next slide has, this is dual language ads that we did on the transit posters, on Big Blue Bus, interior car cards, and also on the Expo Light Rail, both in English and Spanish, about the wage increase. And then the last one is the paid sick leave campaign, where, again, these were ads that we did in the transit stops on Big Blue Bus and on Expo. And then we also use these for a mailer to our businesses and also outreach materials to our workers, to our community outreach partners. And then just next steps for moving ahead. So now that we've wrapped up our community outreach contracts with our outreach partners that finished up at the end of September. And now we're just at staff level continuing to work on doing ongoing communication, particularly with the annual increases on July 1st. Again, through direct mailings to businesses with the business license renewal forms, doing periodic social media posts around the July 1st increases, and using our we call evergreen paid sick leave social media posts to continue to raise awareness about the paid sick leave benefits we have in Santa Monica. We'll also continue to work closely with lots of our partner organizations, our Chamber of Commerce, Santa Monica Travel Tourism, labor organizations, as well as our outreach partners that we've developed great relationships, Kiwa and Rock, that continue to do work throughout the county and the region, and they'll continue to help to spread awareness.
And then in addition to the communication, as Eben mentioned, and we talked about in our report, we really want to move towards a greater enforcement focus. And our report that kind of expands and broadens our relationship with our county partners is an example of that tonight. We're going to continue to maintain our city minimum wage website to provide up-to-date information, continue to answer questions to our dedicated email. And then you'll hear from us again at the end of next month. We're going to bring some recommendations that will enhance the effectiveness of our enforcement and just help to clarify some of the issues that have come up during the law's implementation. And then moving into 2020, we will look for more opportunities to align the city's various wages, our minimum wage, hotel wage, and the living wage for city contractors.
Then one last slide, I'll leave you. So we're going to see if this video works. Should I click on the link real fast?
Yeah.
Or even?
Right click and open it.
Oh, yeah, actually, I'm sorry. Can you do my limited?
Even, do you have it? Yeah. Okay.
So this was a video that City TV did in partnership with our outreach workers. Oh. Okay, so if you were to click on our minimum wage website, smgov.net/minimum wage, we have all the videos hyperlinked there. So it's a good partnership, and we found it was really effective. It wasn't just city staff being spokespeople, but having trusted partners out in the community speaking to one another about. And we're happy on that note if anyone has any questions for us.
Well, thank you for that fine presentation. It's always a pleasure for us to hear that when we enact legislation designed to make our community more inclusive and diverse and to enhance the well-being of the people who work here, that we're succeeding with beyond our expectations, particularly in the area of enforcement. So thank you. Council members, any questions, comments, thoughts? If not, keep up the good work, okay. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now we will put the spotlight on the clerk.
Does anyone have any brief reports on travel using city funds since the last meeting?
Not even a 35-cent Expo ride, council member? Okay. All right. Then could the clerk call the consent calendar, please?
Consent calendar. All items will be considered and approved in one motion unless removed by a council member for discussion, and you have 8 requests to speak.
All right, so we'll hear from the public, and I call your name. Could you be lined up along the wall over there to the audience's left to be ready to speak? We'll first hear from Phil Durner, then Denise Barton. Andrew Wilder will have 5 minutes as the chair of the Airport Commission. Zena Josephs. Looks like Joseph Schmitz is having 2 minutes donated by Nan Tassel. Is Nan here? Very good. And we'll start with those. So, Phil Durner.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. My name is Phil Durner. I'm the Western Regional Rep for the National Business Aviation Association. Many folks will know my organization as those that are most vocal in the opposition of the closing of Santa Monica Airport. I do hope that we can put a lot of that aside to be able to at least come together in the topic of public safety. The topic of breaking up the pavement beyond the runway safety area creates a safety issue here in Santa Monica. Aside from serving no actual purpose other than to drain city funds, since the FAA does not approve of the spending of airport funding for this project, the concern for any major disaster that may need aircraft to come in to deliver aid is then hampered. That pavement exists as a backup for the existing legal portion of the runway, and should anything happen, aircraft that can deliver much more than a helicopter to the city of Santa Monica is then at risk. The Office of Emergency Management expects 4,900 feet of pavement there for emergency use, not legal use day to day, and that becomes a major issue. I think all of us have fire extinguishers in our home. That's something that we keep on hand in case there's a fire. Those are usually never ever used, but we keep it on hand just in case, and it causes no harm by its presence. I think this pavement is just like that fire extinguisher. The only difference is that that major earthquake is coming to our area. We need this in case something happens. For all the issues about the airport, this is one issue of safety that I think we very, very, very much need. So I do hope that you consider not breaking up this pavement in the interest of public safety. Thank you very much.
Denise Barton for 1 minute.
Good evening. If 85% of the Big Blue bus service is outside of the city, and you want just over $500,000 for LAPD services for problems on the bus outside the city, so why is the city allowing Metro to shift their costs again onto the backs of the residents? Isn't Metro who's running the bus service these days? And why would you be buying furniture for a building that hasn't been built yet? Oh yeah, at the bottom it does say, on an as-needed basis for other city staff offices. Hasn't staff furniture been updated within a reasonable amount of time so as not to need $3 million more? Or is that a payoff for a campaign contribution? For minimum wage enforcement, after item 2 tonight, is going to farm that out to LA at a cost of $1.25 million. I thought Santa Monica was separate from LA. Finally, I know as a resident voter, I find having to pay $83 million for city employees' health insurance is excessive. And when is the city council going to pay the residents back for the abuse of this privilege? Thank you.
Andrew Wilder for 5 minutes. Feel free to use less than 5.
Thanks. I'll try. Good evening, council members. My name is Andrew Wilder. I'm the chair of the Airport Commission and a Sunset Park resident. I'm speaking on item 3C on behalf of the commission tonight. At last month's commission meeting, we passed the following motion. We urge the City Council to reinforce your September 26, 2017 direction to staff to proceed with the original publicly vetted Option 1 construction project, including pulverizing and stabilizing the complete depth, both the asphalt and the concrete, of the RSAs, covered with blast protective asphalt for the first 150 feet as earlier specified. I know that's a mouthful, so at last night's commission meeting, we passed a similar motion to reiterate our recommendation that you fully pulverize and stabilize the runway safety areas. The reason for last night's reiteration is due to concern regarding wording in tonight's staff report that makes it sound like there will be an explicit option to leave the RSA areas intact. The Airport Commission remains in support of the full project, including the removal of excess pavement and hydroseeding outside the RSA areas, and full depth pulverization and stabilization of the RSAs as you originally directed staff in September of 2017. My following comments are based on concerns expressed by commissioners and other community members and myself. You will probably hear arguments tonight that the removal of excess runway is a safety concern. This is not true. The FAA has raised no objection whatsoever about safety or anything else about removing the excess concrete outside of the runway safety areas. The only objection the FAA has raised was over the use of airport funds for the changes within the runway safety areas. They did not even object to the pulverization and stabilization of the RSAs. They just didn't want the airport fund to pay for it. The aviation industry's interests are claiming that there is no public benefit to removing the extra unnecessary runway, but that is also not true. The long-term return on investment of this project for the community will be very high, regardless of whether it costs $3 or $4 million. It is a huge step forward towards creating the great park. It will be immediately better for the environment and surrounding areas, and most importantly, it will effectively guarantee Santa Monica never has a 5,000-foot runway ever again. Pilots claim a concern for safety, but where was this concern when the runway was 5,000 feet long? Since 2012, the FAA has mandated runway safety areas of 300 feet long. They were simply no longer optional. Yet why were the pilots not clamoring for safety then? The simple answer is that adding RSAs then would have shortened the runway. They also claim that bird strikes are a concern, but the hydroseed mix that was chosen for this project is specifically approved for use near airports and will not attract birds. Many other airports have similar grass at the end of their runways, and bird strikes are not an issue there. They also claim that Santa Monica Airport is critical in case of a citywide emergency. That may be so, but it would not be because of air support. In 2015, the Santa Monica Office of Emergency Management issued a statement regarding the role of SMO in disaster planning. Quote, "To date, the majority of federal and state regional disaster planning efforts have not formally included general aviation airports. Federal, state, and regional disaster planning efforts emphasize using large military air bases and larger commercial airports in disaster planning. After a regional disaster, air operations will be controlled at the county level, and current plans do not include utilizing the Santa Monica Airport as a primary resource." It goes on to say, "The greatest use of the Santa Monica Airport in responding to and recovering from a disaster may not be for air operations, but rather as a large open space that can be used to amass logistical resources and to establish supplemental emergency medical operations or additional shelter capacity." So, removing the excess runway will have no detrimental effect on safety, and the runway will remain fully compliant with FAA safety regulations. The majority of residents of the city are in favor of the excess runway removal project, as evidenced by the overwhelming passage of Measure LC, even in the face of massive outside lobbying and spending. Measure LC changed the city charter to prioritize a great park over aviation. We ask you to stay the course, and please get this project done as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilder. Zena Josephs.
Thank you. I believe you received an email from the Board of Friends of Sunset Park, and I'd like to read a brief letter from one of our former board members, Brian Bland, that was also sent to you. Quote, "It's been 4 years since Santa Monica voters clearly stated their preference for not maintaining the status quo on the 200 plus acres known as the airport. Not only did the competing ballot measures DNLC illustrate the will of the people at large, that same preference was shown in nearly every voting precinct across the city. Still, the pro-aviation forces continue to grasp at any straw in the hopes of continuing air operations. The SMO runway has now been trimmed at each end, bringing welcome relief from some of the noise and pollution that affected thousands of Santa Monica and LA citizens, including school children. Although a complete end to air operations may be some years away, the city should continue moving toward that end. Please proceed with the Option 1 construction project as originally presented a year ago to remove the pavement outside the airport's runway safety areas, and by pulverizing and stabilizing the full depth of the RSAs, the top layer of asphalt and the lower layer of concrete. And speaking only for myself in response to the MBAA, Santa Monica Airport was not used at the time of either the 1971 or the 1994 earthquakes. I was living here then. And SMO, which had no runway safety areas for nearly 100 years, now has standard RSAs and will continue to have standard RSAs even when this project is completed. Thank you.
Thank you. Hold on one second. Mr. Schmitz, I'll call the remaining names. After you will be Mary Marlowe, then Dave Hopkins, and Edward Story. Welcome, Mr. Schmitz. You have 4 minutes.
For more than 60 years, the residents have tried to get Santa Monica Airport closed. They petitioned the city council, they sued the city, they gave up tens of thousands of jobs to keep the runway from being extended, and successive city councils have said, we're going to close Santa Monica. You have a chance to do this. 5 years ago, yes, SMO lacked runway safety areas, but unknowns certainly to me and the city council, they have been required since September of 2012. The major change was that the FAA can no longer waive or non-standard, non-existent RSAs. So when we lost the 2011 CD court case, the FAA said, you got a runway, there's no RSAs. A year later, that was off the table, and RSAs could have been 300 feet on each side. So had you known, you could have demanded to the FAA that SMO is now 600 feet shorter, 300 feet at each end, and they would have had to agree. the 2012 major changes, and you're going to see some ducking and weaving on this by some folks, in that it's just for commercial airports. That's not the case. The FAA explicitly lost its ability to waive non-standard RSAs, and so the 300-foot RSAs were on the table. All you needed to do was ask. You saw this about a year and a half ago, and the consent decree that you've implemented does this, only instead of compacted earth, you've got 750 feet in addition, including the 300 feet at each end once the project is finished. We're troubled by staff option 1, and the reason we're troubled is it leaves the concrete there. Essentially, you got a 4,100-foot strip. You need a paint job, 2 asphalt blast pads, and taxiways. It's only 600 feet. Why does it matter? Well, it matters a lot because it lets many new airplanes, many other airplanes, come in, and that's for 2 reasons. The first is the FAA sets aside 1,000 feet. Whether it's a 10,000-foot strip or a 2,000-foot strip, the first 1,000 feet is to lose the last 50 feet, slow down 20, 30 knots, flare, and then you have the landing roll. So the true comparison is 25 versus 3,100 feet. The second one is a huge deal. Commercial flights include on-demand flights, and that's going to be a problem for us. The FAA requires 40% safety margins for on-demand flights, and because we got a downslope, that's another 10%. And so for coming in to land on SMO, the runway's 1,750 feet. That extra 300 feet is a huge deal because it puts a lot of aircraft that the Kaufman report took off the table. They're back on the table. I ran the numbers for 2016, and it easily doubles the aircraft that can come in. Same traffic, not even counting the on-demand.
Thank you, Mr. Schmitz. Afraid your time is up. Ms. Marlowe?
Good evening. I live near the airport, so I want to weigh in on this. There are still jets flying overhead because the runway is still longer than it needs to be with this runway safety area. I spoke to the city engineer this morning, and he tells me this is really just a financial issue. The issue for them and why their report seemed a little confusing was that they expected to use airport funds to pay to remove the pavement and pulverize it and make the runway safety area a green area. However, the FAA says they can't use airport funds to do that. So the reason why it's coming back to council is that you need funding to really finish this part of the airport that you gave direction for over a year ago. So it's really a money issue. Rick is shaking his head. The city engineer's wrong? I asked, I was like, I've never seen a report that says, gee, we'll do no option or we'll remove it. So I said, I don't understand. Which is it? Since council gave pretty darn specific direction that all that runway was supposed to be removed. So my understanding is it's all about money. One comment on tonight's agenda, there's also $3 million for new office furniture for the city annex. If we can spend $3 million on new furniture for the city annex that's similar to what we have now, we can fix this runway problem. Thank you.
Dave Hawkins?
May I just briefly weigh in, Mayor? Just to clarify, I didn't mean to enter into the public comment, and we, of course, have great respect for everyone who comments here. I wasn't seeking to doubt either the credibility of Ms. Marlowe or our city engineer, just that the way Ms. Marlowe characterized it, I think is inaccurate and perhaps is a misunderstanding. The reason we are here now is we are not asking you to weigh in on whether to pulverize or not. The reason we are here now is because we only got 2 bids, and the bids are much greater than our budget. So what we're asking the council to do tonight on the consent calendar.
Can I suggest that we hear from the public, and then when this item inevitably gets
Sure.
pulled, then you have the opportunity to weigh in?
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks. Mr. Hopkins?
Mr. Mayor, councillors, good evening. David Hopkins, Ocean Park and Santa Monica resident. My question to you this evening, who are you going to believe, amateurs with opinions or professionals with facts? All the people, most of the people who've been speaking against this motion and against Santa Monica are well-meaning and I respect their opinion. However, they have no aviation or airport qualifications. And while they are entitled to their opinion, many of them have got their facts wrong. The professionals, on the other hand, which is your own Office of Emergency Management, this is your plan, the All Hazards Mitigation Plan for Santa Monica, lists Santa Monica and its runway as critical and essential infrastructure. Not desirable, or we'd like to have it, critical and essential. And the project you're considering will materially degrade public safety in the city. First off, it's a gigantic waste of money. It would be one thing if you could turn this into a park or a picnic area, but you're just pulverizing ends of the runways which can't be used for any public purpose. So that's $4.5 million down the drain. Secondly, is you won't be able to use it for anything else, and you'll be degrading public safety for the pilots and the passengers like myself and our association members who use the airport on a regular basis. Our 100-year-old airport has a fantastic safety record. Now with the runway shortening, that's obviously brought down the margins. What you're trying to do even more now is reduce safety margins even more, and it really doesn't buy us anything. So consider, again, the opinions of the people. Your airport commission, who's vehemently for this project and wants to do it, is not only unqualified, they're not aviation qualified or airport qualified, they have a vested interest in seeing the runway closed, as they both live within a quarter of a mile of the runway. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
And wrapping it up will be Edward Story.
Thank you, City Council and staff members. My name is Edward Story. I'm a pilot. I'm also a founding board member of the California Disaster Airlift Response Team, and I'm a member of the Santa Monica Airport Association board. I'm also a member of the California Pilots Association. I hope you will reconsider safety, because there is no pilot that will say, I want a shorter runway. Every pilot will say, I want a longer runway, as long as I can have. Runway is safety. And it's safety for the population also, because during the big shake, the capacity to bring in military type transports and so forth would be reduced by the shortening of the runway. I commend to your attention the Watsonville during the Loma Prieta earthquake. General Aviation brought in, and these were smaller planes, brought in 500,000 pounds of supplies when all the roads were out. I would also consider the costs, as Dave has pointed out. This continues a lot of useless spending on the airport in order to limit its usefulness. Earlier, the chairman of the Airport Commission, which could probably be more appropriately called a real estate commission, spoke to the fact that he believes that there would be a great return on investment. Look, I'm a businessman. I don't know how many of you folks are, but I don't know what numbers justify a return on investment when you're cutting out runway that has existed for 100 years.
Thank you, Mr. Story. Yeah. That concludes the public input, and so the consent calendar is before us. I am going to pull item 3C. Does anybody else care to pull any other items on the agenda? Councilmember McEwen.
That was why I had my light on, 3C.
Well, in that case, I'll entertain
Whoa, one more. I'd like to pull 3I.
Okay, so we're pulling 3C and 3I. I'll entertain a motion for the remaining items on the consent calendar.
So moved.
Oh, second.
All right, the motion by McEwen, second by Hemwich, to approve all items on the consent calendar with the exception of 3C and 3I. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember O'Connor?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Hemmerich?
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilmember McCune?
Yes.
Okay, item 3C is.
Oh, wait, doesn't the mayor get to vote?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor Winter.
2 weeks before the election, you're disenfranchising me?
Mayor Winter. Sorry about that.
I actually sent out a vote by mail ballot on this one, so.
So is that a yes?
So what is your vote?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so now, item 3C is reject all bids for the reuse of excess airfill pavement project.
Do we have someone from the staff on there, so I should just direct my questions to the city manager? So, first of all, I want to reemphasize what the city manager is saying. We have already made the decision to remove this excess pavement, and people were trying to get us to reassess that decision that we made over a year ago already. The question before us tonight is whether or not the bids we received to do so were probably higher than we anticipated, and whether or not we should go out and seek additional bids to lower the cost of this project. Isn't that correct?
That's correct, Mayor.
So the staff recommendation is that we would seek 2 different bids, one of which, both bids would pulverize the excess pavement outside the runway safety area and hydroseed it, correct?
That's correct.
But then we're asked to seek one bid that would include pulverizing and stabilizing inside the runway safety area, and the other bid would keep it intact, correct?
So the base bid will have everything outside of the RSA removed and replaced with hydroseed. And then we have an alternate bid item, which would cover the RSA pulverized for full depth.
And am I correct in understanding that the FAA has agreed we can use airport funds to cover everything but any work we do on the runway safety area? Is that correct?
That's correct.
So the bids that came back, the costs of doing that work of pulverizing and stabilizing the runway safety area were in the order of magnitude of about $300,000, and the remaining, multi-million-dollar costs would be covered by the airport fund.
That's correct. The RSA cost is about $345, including 10% contingency.
And that's with the bids that we think are too high, and if we go out and rebid, we might potentially get a lower estimate for that portion of the work.
That is our anticipation.
So we're basically being asked, in the interest of being cautious with dollars, whether they come from the airport fund or the general fund, we go out and seek some other bids to see if they might come in lower for all those costs.
Correct.
So what is the thinking about going out to bid for the package with leaving the runway safety area intact? So we have the option of not spending general fund money on that particular part of the project?
Correct. It provides the City Council with the option to decide whether they want to find funding sources elsewhere to cover the RSA work, or to decide whether you want to proceed without the RSA work.
All right. Anybody else have any questions to staff on this? Councilmember McCune?
Could I?
Sure. I cut you off before, so.
No, and I apologize. And again, no disrespect to Mary Marlowe, just seeking to clarify that I wasn't doubting her credibility, just wanted to make sure that we had a shared understanding of what our position is. And our position is that in our expediting the process, which the council directed us to do, we moved this a little more quickly than we usually do, and so the bid process was shortened, and the result was we only got 2 bids. We don't like to go out on a big project like this with only 2 bids, especially if the bids come in significantly over our engineer's estimate. So that's why we're here. So it is a matter of money. Mary's absolutely correct, but it's not a matter of money about the pulverization. It's a matter of money about the overall bid, just as you've characterized it and just as Rick has confirmed.
All right, thank you. So I personally think that we absolutely should go out and see if we can get lower bids, just for the opportunity to save some money both in the general fund and the airport fund. I'm not convinced that we necessarily need to go out to bid to see what it would cost to do the project without touching the runway safety area. I'm very much in favor of the pulverizing and stabilizing of the runway safety area. I will say that if it comes back and it's still in the order of magnitude of $300,000, I'd be happy to consider allocating up to $100,000 of council funds to offset the cost of the general fund if that's what is necessary. Councilmember McCune?
Well, I think we're on the same page, but I want to say that I found the organized, concerted outpouring of strongly worded, sometimes offensively worded opinion from the aviation industry all over the country to be very persuasive. It persuaded me that hope springs eternal in the aviation breast, that they're going to get that airport back. And that's not what's going to happen. And so I totally support our going back out to a bid on only what has been called the alternate. That would be the one that pulverized everything, including the RSA. I think we should pursue a bid for that and for that only.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion.
Second. You can second it.
All right, so we have city managers.
Yeah, we'll of course have to identify the source of those funds, so we would, I assume, come back when we award a bid with some options for how to do that.
Yes, which is why I threw out the idea of at least augmenting the cost with some money from the discretionary fund.
And I'd like to make a comment for the record after you dispose of this motion.
All right, so the motion is by McEwen and second by Himmerich to send this project out for another round of bids, but to only include the project which includes the full pulverization and stabilization of the runway safety area. Is that correct? So we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember O'Connor?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Himmerich?
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilmember McKeown?
Yes.
And Mayor Winter?
Yes, so that carries unanimously.
One more vote.
Councilmember O'Day's back.
Yeah, I snuck in behind you, and I'll abstain just because in transit I missed a portion of this conversation.
Thank you.
And Mr. Cole?
Again, I want to reiterate that the council and of course the staff have enormous respect for all the public input, and we generally don't try to correct facts because people have the right to their own opinions. Testimony was heard tonight that the Santa Monica Airport is a critical and essential facility in our city's multi-hazard disaster preparedness plan. And given the gravity of that testimony, I just want to point out that that is absolutely correct. All of our parks are on the same list. All of our schools are on the same list. In addition to that, all of our fire stations, of course, our city hall, the civic auditorium, which is closed, all of our branch libraries. So it is a list that has been mischaracterized. This is not facilities that are critical and essential in the case of a disaster. These are the critical and essential community facilities that we would want to protect and repair if they were damaged by a disaster. So it's incorrect to characterize this as a list of critical and essential for disaster relief and recovery. These are things that we rely on when we don't have a disaster. So if we have an earthquake or other incident, we would want to restore all of these events. Obviously, we could do all right without the Ocean Park Library branch as part of the recovery effort for an earthquake.
I don't know about that. But
there's some good books in there on how to fix things.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, since there was a lot of confusion with the email traffic we got, is that this was always just about we're going ahead with this project, but trying to get it done for a lesser cost. That's all this is about. So now, item 3I, Councilman Himmerich.
I pulled item 3I because
Can I read what item 3I is?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, item 3I is the annual premiums to Blue Shield of California for employee health benefits.
And what isn't in the deadline is in the headline is a very big number that's associated with it, and I actually don't have any objection to this because I know we will be saving money by approving this item. I just think that to have an $83 million item on the consent calendar might deserve some explanation from the city manager.
And I'd be happy to do so. This is, of course, spread out over 3 years, so it's about $26 million a year for covering every single one of our our city's share of all of the medical benefits for all of our 2,100 staff. Of course, we share the costs with with the folks who work for us as well. And when the bids, when the rates came in this year from Aetna, which provides 2 of the 3 plans that we offer our staff, were, we thought, excessive, particularly compared to Kaiser, which was the 3rd. We asked our broker to go out to bid, and they found plans that are essentially equivalent, covering about 95% of the same physicians and hospitals that we currently utilize, including the key ones that are right here in the immediate area, but for savings of about $5 million over the course of the next 3 years. Am I right about the number? So it's a significant savings.
Thank you. And on that note, but I think everybody ought to know that our staff did go out and save us $5 million. So I will move approval of 3I.
Councilmember McEwen.
I just want to comment that the consent calendar is for action staff is going to take in accordance with policy already adopted by the council, and I believe it's already the adopted policy of this council to save money whenever possible.
Yes. That's why we appreciate you taking the 35-cent Expo ride when you travel.
So I was wanting to be sure I was correct on that number. I was off by a 0. I apologize. It'll cost, it's $500,000. I think that's a year, isn't it? $500,000 a year. So it's 1.5 million, not 5 million. So I was remembering it off the top of my head, and I wanted to check it, and I want to be accurate on the record. So 1.5 million in savings.
Thank you.
So it was item 3I was moved by Councilmember Hemmerich, seconded by Councilmember Vasquez. We get a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember McCune?
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilmember Himmerich?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Day?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connor?
Yes.
And Mayor Winter?
Yes. So of all 7 of us here, that it passes unanimously, and that concludes the consent calendar. Let's move on to item 7A.
Item 7A is the second reading and adoption of an ordinance creating Santa Monica Municipal Code Section 10.08.565 to establish a vehicle weight restriction requirement for Santa Monica Pier Bridge.
Second.
All right, moved adoption on second reading for item 7A regarding the vehicle weight restriction for the Santa Monica Pier Bridge, moved by Hemmerich, seconded by Davis. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember O'Connor?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Day?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Himmerich?
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilmember McCune?
Yes.
And Mayor Winter?
Yes, so that passes unanimously. Let's move on to 7B.
Item 7B is modification to taxi cab franchise for consistency with AB 1069 and AB 939, an extension of taxi cab franchise agreement with TMAT Corp. doing business as Taxi Taxi, and you have 6 requests to speak.
Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and staff. My name is Cheryl Shavers, and I administer the taxi franchise program. Before I get started, I want to clarify that Council will not take any action to award a franchise this evening. That is not what's happening this evening. The award of the franchise will take place at the next Council meeting if directed by Council to do so. So this evening, we're here presenting a modification to the municipal code as it relates to the taxi franchise for consistency with recent legislation related to taxi cabs. So 2 assembly bills, 1069 and 939, were signed by the governor in 2017 and September of this year. They were enacted to modernize taxi transportation. Oh, I'm sorry. They were enacted to modernize taxi services and kind of level the playing field between the taxi cab companies and TNCs. So today, we're recommending amending Chapter 6.49 of the Municipal Code to comply with the recent changes and adopt a resolution establishing taxi meter rates. About 8 years ago, franchises were granted to 5 taxi cab companies. Extensions were granted in 2015 and in 2017, and last year, Council authorized the reduction in the number of authorized vehicles at the request of the taxi cab companies. Currently, the franchise consists of four taxi cab companies. MetroCab forfeited their franchise in January of this year, saying that they lost the majority of their business to TNCs. Trips are down 80%. Revenue is down also. And currently, there are 156 authorized vehicles. It was 199 minus the 43 vehicles that left with MetroCab. And this year, staff inspected and permitted only 137 of those 56. And half of those 137 provide services in other jurisdictions. So Assembly Bills 1069 and 939 made some big changes to the local taxi cab regulation as follows. So currently, with this new law, jurisdictions may regulate those companies that are substantially located. Also allows companies permitted in other jurisdictions to provide prearranged trips. It also limits the regulation of meter rates, and it gives companies, taxi cab companies, greater flexibility to adjust their rates and fares. And it also allows cities to adopt operating requirements not related to permitting or business licensing. So the first update to the ordinance is related to the limiting of the regulations to companies that are substantially located. So currently, Taxi is the only company that meets that definition. The ordinance right now is updated to reflect a non-competitive process. So in the past, it was non-competitive. Now it's not that way anymore. A company has to be substantially located to be granted a franchise. Any taxi company can become substantially located, and some companies have expressed the desire to meet that requirement. Any company that has a permit in LA County may pick up prearranged trips. So a company that's in Culver City could come, a company that's in East LA could provide prearranged trips here in Santa Monica. Currently, Bell Cab, Independent, and Yellow provide about 40% of all Santa Monica trips, and we expect them to continue to provide prearranged trips. Other companies can provide trips. For instance, companies that are in the surrounding area, like companies that serve Malibu or Brentwood or Venice, or other companies that are not here right now, can also start providing prearranged trips here. Taxi companies have the flexibility to set fares, and so that they can kind of compete like TNCs, which adjust their fares with demand and so forth. Also, the city has the ability to set the maximum rate. Right now, fares are set by council resolution. The bill allows companies to, like I mentioned, set the rates and fees to adjust with the demand. Taxi did let us know that they would prefer to continue with the current rates until they can decide, how they want to structure their rates and their fees. And we've also been in discussions with other taxi administrators throughout the county to set a maximum rate across jurisdictions, because companies can provide prearranged trips here that are permitted throughout the county. Another update to the ordinance is the city may set operating requirements, such as the use of taxi stands and street hails. Currently, all franchises have access to the stands and they can pick up hails. But going forward, Staff is not recommending that LA permitted companies use the stands or street hails. And LA County, to my understanding, is not considering sharing their stands with non-permitted companies. There's another option that the city could consider. Staff is not recommending this option, but a city or a county may accept a taxi cab company or driver permit issued by another city, and in turn can issue a sticker, a permit, a photo ID that authorizes the company to operate. So for example, an LA company, 123 Taxi, has a permit in LA City. They can come to Santa Monica and receive a Santa Monica sticker. Their driver can receive a permit, and they'll be able to operate and pick up prearranged trips, non-prearranged trips, use the stands, and flag trips as well. Bell Cab and Yellow Cab informed that they would wish to continue to provide taxi cab service through this option, and other companies may as well. So anybody could come and we can give them a permit. But we want to stress that the law allows them to come and provide prearranged trips at any time. So they're there, the prearranged trips are there, they could do marketing, they could increase their prearranged trips. They will have access to Santa Monica. We also have concerns about curb use and the administrative burdens with these other companies that we cannot fully regulate. Currently, a test is required for all new driver permit applicants. We're recommending to discontinue this permit. There are a few new applicants, and the testing process causes delays. Also, the City of LA stopped requiring tests in 2016. A lot of drivers that come here are already permitted in LA, and they have to take another test. And so that's one of the recommendations as well. We also recommend that the fees remain unchanged, franchise fees remain unchanged, except those that are annually adjusted. We just want you to know the current and projected revenue of the program moving forward will not recover the cost to administer the program. I'd also like to say that this chart represents if Taxi were to be awarded a franchise here, and I want to stress that the new law doesn't allow us to authorize a number of vehicles. So Taxi, even though they project that they need 50 vehicles, there's a possibility that they could need more, they could need less, and it's up to them to decide how many vehicles they need to provide taxi cab services. So our next steps are to return to council in November regarding an extension of Taxi's franchise, as they are the only company that's currently substantially located. We also will return to council to propose revisions to the administrative citation fines to be consistent with state law, implement the regulatory and administrative changes, which we're here today for, and also update the rules and issue those no later than December 31st of this year. So the rules regard how drivers have to apply vehicle requirements, emission requirements, those rules come from the ordinance, and they are administrative, and they'll be updated by staff. And so we recommend amending 6.49 and adopting a resolution establishing taxi meter rates.
Thank you. Is Ms. Shavers, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm Cheryl Shavers.
Thank you. And
you're welcome.
So just to clarify, in case people in the audience are confused, all we're being asked to do tonight is to amend our taxi cab franchise regulations to be in conformance with recent changes in state law.
Yes.
And to adopt the resolution establishing the taximeter rates.
Yes.
And any issues of franchises and other things will be dealt with in the month of November.
Yes.
Thank you. Don't go anywhere. There appears to be a lot of questions for you, starting with Councilmember Vasquez.
In your report, you mentioned, and you just mentioned again, substantially located. How do you define that? What's the definition of that?
The state law, the government code defines substantially located as either having a primary business location here in the city of Santa Monica, or a taxi cab company's prearranged and non-prearranged trips, the location where the greatest number of their non-prearranged and prearranged trips take place. So that they'd either be substantially located based on the number of their trips, where the majority of their trips take place, or having a primary business location. So a company could come and open a business here in Santa Monica, and they could be substantially located.
So a company that's, let's say, in Culver City, even though they're maybe based or headquartered in Culver City, but it has substantial activity in Santa Monica, would that be considered substantially located?
Yes. So if I can clarify, or maybe Eben can clarify.
So, Councilmember, their largest share of trips would have to be Santa Monica based. So if it's 40%, that's not good enough. It's 51%.
50 plus.
Right, 51% would do it.
And I mean, I was going through the new legislation that you're referring to, I guess what you're basing your recommendation on. And I guess I'm a little confused, but it sounds like in your analysis, what do we have? We're down to 4 franchise now?
We have 4 companies right now.
4 companies. And in your reading of it, or your take of it, it sounds like of the 4, you're saying only one of them qualifies?
Yeah, right now, Taxi is the only company that's located here, has a primary business, or the majority of their trips are located in Santa Monica. So we do have other companies. Bell Cab is a LA company, and the majority of their trips are not located here in Santa Monica. None of the other companies' trips, the majority of their trips don't take place here. Some of their trips do, but the majority of all the trips that any other company provides do not take place here in Santa Monica.
Okay.
Councilmember McEwen.
My questions have to do with the resolution establishing taxi meter rates. As I understand it, our current taxi meter rate is a hard number. That's what must be charged for a trip, with the exception of some discounts to the airport.
Correct.
The new resolution sets a maximum rate, but allows the taxi companies at certain times of day or days of the week to charge a lower rate if they wish to.
Correct.
What does that do to the drivers? Do the drivers still get the same amount of money, or do the drivers lose income when they get into this competitive rate situation?
I would think that they would, but I can't answer that question. Maybe somebody from the taxi cab company, some of the companies are here, maybe they might be able to answer that question for you.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis.
Actually, that was somewhat akin to one of my questions, which is we had a wonderful presentation tonight about our minimum wage ordinance. Does the minimum wage ordinance apply to the taxi drivers that are covered by this program?
Councilmember, historically, we have not reviewed it under that lens. A lot of taxi cab companies have drivers that own their own vehicles, but there is a lot that's developing both in the law and in practice, and we are looking into that.
Okay, great, thank you. And then my other question was, given that, as I understand it, once we adopt these changes, we will have only one taxi cab company that will be allowed to sit at our designated taxi zones in the city. Is that correct? And that would be Taxi.
Yes, that's what staff is.
Are we doing any evaluation of whether or not we have the right number of taxi zones, or whether we have the right placement? So, for example, I know one of the issues we've had in the past is there aren't taxi zones near the 17th Street Expo Station, that sort of thing. So I'm just wondering, since we're going to have maybe fewer companies jockeying for what I'll call the primo spots downtown, is it also an opportune time to take a look at that? And I've clearly triggered Ms. Steffen.
Good evening. Yes, it is actually a really appropriate time to look at that, and we are happy to work with any of the franchisees in the city to identify locations where they're seeing the need for that kind of use, and certainly the reduced number will make that easier to do. We're also concurrently, although it happens to be around the same time, we're concurrently looking at some just overall allocation of curb space, and we'll be looking at the taxi stands in general.
Well, that was my third question there, whether we'd be looking at curb space allocation. So thank you very much.
Councilmember Herridge.
So I guess I'm a little confused because I thought that the last time you came here before us, we tried to make it possible for the taxi cab operators and companies, both the drivers and the companies, to be more flexible, right? And to be able to compete against the other modes of transportation that have sort of invaded their space, right? And I thought we had done that, but I guess we didn't. Is that right?
Well, the law happened, and
I guess that's what I'm having trouble with. You know, so the law happened, and now the law has stricter rules than it did before, right? Whereas we were trying to make them less strict to allow them to compete in the same space.
I don't think so. I think so right now we have franchises, and
right.
All the taxi cab companies have to have permits, and they have to pay fees in every jurisdiction that they want to operate in. And what these laws did was remove that and only require cities or jurisdictions to regulate the companies that are located in their jurisdiction. So we have the option to do that. As I mentioned earlier, that is not what staff's recommendation is. We can allow companies to come. We can give them a permit if they're permitted someplace else and allow them to operate as they do now.
But on call only, not give them, or we could give them space at stands should we choose to.
Yes, we could. Mm-hmm.
Because what we're doing now by creating a monopoly, it seems to me, is allowing that one operator to control basically all of the taxi stand operations in the city of Santa Monica, which, you know, I mean, I thought we were trying to make it more, more competitive and more competitive with the gig economy. And it seems to me that this not only makes it less competitive, but also it gives each of the people who want to drive taxis as opposed to Ubers or Lyfts or whatever they want to drive, no choice but taxi. Is that right?
No, it's not correct, because they can provide prearranged trips. If I live in Santa Monica and I have my special Bell Cab driver that I like, I can call Mr. Smith on the phone and say, hey, can you come pick me up, blah, blah, blah. So they do have options.
And you can call Bell Cab. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
It's okay.
But you can call Bell Cab or
Yellow Cab or any cab company that you want with this new regulation, and they can come and pick you up. It has to be prearranged either on the phone or an app or something like that. We're not going to allow them to drive around or sit at our stands and wait for calls to come in or to pick up hails. Curb space is kind of tight.
I do get that, but we don't have similar regulations for other car sharing. I don't want to call it car sharing, but other services, right? Ride sharings, ride hailing,
TNCs.
Whatever. Yeah. So
that's a matter of state law, though. That's both these. The Public Utilities Commission regulates the TNCs, and the state law is just taking away a lot of our ability to regulate the taxi companies. So we're responding to state law.
Yeah, I think if I may, sorry, I would completely agree with the mayor on this point. It's It's simply a nature of what happened in the state of California, which is not what happened in other states, that the state decided to usurp local authority to regulate the TNCs. In this case, I think what we're observing, and part of the reason that we're recommending that taxi be given the right to use those cab stands is because we know that they have dedicated a lot of service to the city of Santa Monica. They maintain a very high level of service. Even as overall trips were declining, their percentage of trips for Santa Monica remained very, very high. And they are locally based and are more accessible to the needs of our user base. The other thing is that it is completely fine for any of these other companies to flood our market with marketing if they want to be the person who, you know, gets those phone calls, who gets the hailing on the app. And now there are so many ways that people tend to call these services that was our opinion that through phone calls and apps and other services, those companies had and the customer had perfectly good access to plenty of options. So that was our assessment. The council has to obviously weigh many things, but that was our take on it.
And we can change this at any time if it becomes a bad model. I mean, this is just for now in view of the new law.
Of course.
Thank you.
We change our taxi regulations every 18 months. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Staff has noticed.
Yeah. All right. I think we're done with you for now. Thank you very much for a comprehensive report. We'll now turn to the public. If you've not been here before, we'd like you to line up against the wall to the audience's left and be ready to speak. We'll start off with Sanford Clare, followed by Henry Reut, Neil Evans, Daniel Klein, and Marco Soto, and I'll call the remainder of the names shortly. Sanford Clare.
Good evening. My name is Sandy Clare. I've been a taxi driver here in Santa Monica for the last 10 years. I'm going to reverse for 1 second the order I wanted to do this in. I want to remind everyone that when the taxi franchise started in this city, there were 5 companies, all starting equal, all starting with the ability to make their business in Santa Monica. Taxi is the only company that really concentrated, that really has taken it to the level that they give service here. I live in Santa Monica. I've been here 11 years. I'm rethinking that because Uber and Lyft have grown so much in popularity that I'm not taking as many trips. It's becoming hard to turn a living here. I sat here 2 years ago and listened to Mr. Salvatore Valles, the taxi administrator at the time, ask for a reduction in the number of taxis based on his findings. You were very compassionate and you voted on the side of the drivers and you said no reductions. And while I appreciate compassion, I think now is a time for tough love. It's a time for common sense. Taxi is homegrown. We love working in Santa Monica. We love taking care of the assisted living facilities, the elderly, servicing the emergency rooms in St. John's and UCLA, the residents, the hotels. We're out there every morning at 4, 5, 6 a.m. We have 35, 40 cabs a day in the city. These other companies have 5 cabs, 10 cabs, 3 cabs. I strongly urge you to vote yes and give the taxi franchise in Santa Monica to Taxi with all these other companies having the right to market and pick up personal rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Henry Reut.
Yes. Thank you. My name is Henry Reut. I am Secretary for Independent Taxi Owner Association, and we've been servicing Santa Monica since 1977. When the franchise was awarded, we were one of the companies that got awarded the franchise. We put quite a few vehicles on the road. All our vehicles are owners operators or operated by the members of their families. So if we lose Santa Monica ability to sit at the stands and pick up flag downs, we're talking about 20-25 families are going to be without business. At the moment, we have 6 or 7 vehicles that are dedicated in Santa Monica. The rest of our vehicles have dual licensing with City of LA. But whenever needed, they're always here and they always sit at the stands on the days when they don't work at the airport. So I would like you to consider keeping existing companies, or at least some numbers of the cabs from the existing companies in Santa Monica. So you don't get monopolized by one company, and something, God forbid, happens with taxi, you have something to back up on. Thank you.
Thank you. Neil Evans.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Neil Evans. I'm the attorney for Independent Cab. I just thought it would be a good idea to give you a little perspective on while you're not voting tonight on the franchise issue, I think some direction to staff would be beneficial. Independent Taxi has been operating here for 30, 40 years at least, and they have the ability to continue to operate here. The substantially located concept is something that they can work with. It's kind of a gotcha thing. Taxi was dedicated in Santa Monica. It was not required that we be dedicated in Santa Monica. If that is a requirement, and obviously based upon the interpretation of law it is, we can modify our operation to continue to operate in the city. By modify our operation, we have a dedicated fleet that we can segregate from the rest of our company, and we can establish, if appropriate, a subsidiary entity that will operate exclusively in Santa Monica, will have offices in Santa Monica, will do whatever it is that's necessary in order to satisfy the new law. But and in the meantime, we can do the stickers or the ability to continue to sit at stands and take flag downs. We're talking about competition. If you take away the ability to sit at stands and accept flag downs, you take away our ability to compete in a way that's favorable against Uber. Uber can't do that. So what's essentially going to happen is the entire taxi industry all over Southern California is going to be Uberized. And the only way for companies to effectively operate in the city of Santa Monica is if they can do things that Uber can't do. So by taking away ITOA's ability to sit at stands and take flag downs, you're destroying its ability to become more effective, or at least maintain its effectiveness. While it is true that we're in an app world and everybody wants to click their phone, if you're running out of the mall or you're running somewhere in Santa Monica and you want immediate transportation, you look for a cab stand. Please allow us to continue to operate and give direction to staff to continue to allow us to operate in that fashion. There's the stickering while we're working out the other issue. Thank you.
Daniel Klein.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Klein. I'm here for Bell Cab Company. I want to sort of suggest to council to have a two-level system, not what staff is recommending. Staff is saying only let those that are substantially located, and I'll get to that in a second. Their reading of the code isn't correct, but the code, the government code, allows Santa Monica to have a second level of cabs utilize your stands. You can still enforce your laws, you can direct us what you want us to do, but not doing that will create problems. If you don't do that, you're going to have our cabs roaming around, going in circles, waiting for a call, having congestion on your streets. It's going to be chaos. Why would you want that? If there's a taxi stand open, let them utilize it. If someone comes up, they take it. If not, they go. The other thing I want to mention is Taxi, I understand, has 4 wheelchair vans. By doing this, you're going to limit Santa Monica to 4 wheelchair vans. Bell Cab has 8 that are permitted in Santa Monica. Why would you limit the amount of wheelchair vans just to help one company? Basically, what you're doing is putting all your eggs in one basket, and I suggest don't do that. Who knows what's going to happen? Staff told me that that company is for sale. Taxi is for sale. If they sell, what's going to happen? Then you have no taxi service. You have nothing going on. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. When it came up for a franchise, the idea was to have 5 companies, so you don't have all your eggs in one basket. So let's keep as many as possible and direct staff to create a code that allows a 2-tiered system that can service the Santa Monica residents with all sorts of services, wheelchairs, fast service, taxi stands, walk-up, hails, for all the companies that have put time and effort into your city. If you guys have any questions, I want to mention one thing, and that's that their reading of the code was incorrect, because the substantially located, I apologize. May I have 15 seconds?
Finish your second sentence.
The substantially located definition in the code says it's either a company that's located or has their shares or their trips, or a cab driver that is located and has his shares. And they didn't take that into account at all in their reading of the legislation.
Okay, that was a very long sentence, but Councilmember Vasquez has a follow-up question anyway.
Actually, you answered part of it, but on the flip side, so your issue is more just given a variety, because I guess at this point you're one of the 5 that currently operates in the city, right?
1 of 4, yes, sir.
Or 1 of 4, I mean, because 1 is gone. And at the end of the day, what was your give me your definition again, the way you interpreted the legislation on
Well, it's what the code says. It's either a company that has either 51% of its total fares from that city or is located in the city, or a driver that is located in the city, or a driver that has most of its trips from that city. So you'd have to go through the driver as well as the company, and it's why have that task? Why not, if a company wants to service and follow your rules and regulations and provide good service, that's what we'd suggest that you do.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for your time.
Marco Soto and Mr. Soto, before you come up, I'll call a few more names. Tom Larmore has 2 minutes donated by Hassan Salem. There you are. So Mr. Larmore has 4 minutes, and then after that will be Ahmed Salem, who has 2 minutes donated by Mahmoud Salem. Appears to be a family reunion going on right now. And then we will wrap things up with Ayman Radwan. All right, Mr. Soto, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Marco Soto, representing Yellow Cab of Los Angeles and Santa Monica. We've been operating here in the city for 30 years, and we'd like to continue operating in the city. We want to request that the council consider adopting an ordinance that's inclusive of all the cab companies, that permits the cab companies that are currently licensed to pick up prearranged fares and non-prearranged fares. We're willing to continue to pay into the system and pay for these stickers. We've been on a franchise system back in 2009, and now the city is considering giving a monopoly to one taxi cab company. The bill, which we were the major proponents of the bill, we purposely made sure that we did not exclude the ability of having to pick up non-prearranged fares from cities. We wanted to create a permit system which allowed us to do that. We did want to limit the number of permits that we had to get countywide, because there's 88 cities in the county, and we were having to go to 18 different cities for some of the cab companies that we operate, and the drivers having to get the same background check, pay for the same permit fees, all over the place. And so it was just a way to simplify that process. We do have a dedicated cab company here, dedicated cabs in the city of Santa Monica. The number that was, the percentage of trips that was suggested by staff may be correct at 40%. But if we're doing 40% here and 20% in other jurisdictions and 20 and 20, still 40% is the majority of the trips. I'm not sure that what Mr. Klein said, that 51% of the trips have to be from here. I have not read that language in the bill. It's just a majority of the trips to show that you are substantially located within a city. So we respectfully request that the city consider adopting an ordinance that's inclusive. We have one from our statewide trade association, TPAC, that we can share with the city. Thank you very much.
Soto. Mr. Larmore?
Good evening. It's been 3 years since I was up here on taxi cab matters, so it's nice to be back. We represent TMAT Corporation, doing business as Taxi Taxi. Having done business here for the last 30 years, exclusively in Santa Monica, with all of its cabs dedicated to serving Santa Monica. And we express our appreciation to the staff for the careful work they did. These statutes are not easy to parse your way through. I can vouch for that. So we are in support generally of the staff recommendation, but we do have a couple of suggestions about the franchise awarding process. The ordinance that you have says that a company that's situated locally is eligible to apply for a franchise. And that they do that through providing documentation. And there's a whole bunch of paragraphs there that are explanatory of what those things are. And those are taken essentially from the state law, which has a section that says permitted cab companies must do these things. And that's where all of those sections came from, all those clauses came from in that new section. But when you all adopted the franchise system almost 10 years ago now, you were very careful to have additional requirements that were important in Santa Monica. For example, the fleet needs to have low emission vehicles. That was a big deal. And so that's the kind of thing that ought to be included in the ordinance when the staff is considering awarding a franchise. It should also be looking at a dependability in providing quality and safety service over a lengthy period of time. When you evaluated the franchise applications back in 2010, you were looking at providing service over 10 years. So I think something like that is appropriate to include. Insurance requirements are something that should be included in your evaluating franchise applications. Now, it may be that the staff will and may have planned to include things like that in rules and regulations, but it seems to me that since you took the step of putting them in the ordinance that we currently have, that it would be a mistake not to continue to include those things. So I wanted to address this issue of the quote monopoly being given to taxi. First of all, you have to recognize that under the state law, the city cannot require licenses from companies that are not situated locally in Santa Monica. You're prohibited from doing that. Santa Monica, currently, Taxi is in fact the only one of the 4 companies that's situated locally, but the ordinance doesn't say Taxi is being given the only franchise. It says that companies have to be situated locally in order to apply for a franchise. And so what that means is that any company, Bell, Yellow, Independent, can apply for a franchise if they meet the definition of being situated locally in Santa Monica. The company has a permanent address, and it can demonstrate a certain. God, did I use 4 minutes already? Wow. And so, anyway, I think. Can I make my last point?
I think Councilmember Hemorich has a question for you. Perhaps it will be leading.
Okay. All right.
So is your last point going to be that should they have a local presence or should a driver be located locally, that they could have the same privileges?
No, my last point is that it's sort of like that, but it's really that because if a company is not situated locally, you cannot require a license. Now, you can adopt operating requirements on all these companies. You can adopt operating requirements that apply to people who are doing prearranged trips. But you can't do it through a license structure. So your only mechanism to enforce these obligations that you're imposing is a administrative fine of $100 to $1,000. That's the only remedy you have. And the real remedy to make sure that companies adhere to the operating requirements that you're looking for is the ability to suspend or revoke their license. And you can't do that because you can't require the license.
Okay, well, so I have a different question because no, and that's interesting, but I'm actually interested in the independent taxis because it's my understanding that within the independent taxi group, there are people who actually own their own taxis and operate them, own their own medallions, right? And so if a local person owned a taxi and had a medallion that was their own medallion, operated their own taxi in Santa Monica, would those people is this a company-wide issue, or is this a per driver issue?
Well, let me answer it this way. To me, one of the requirements that you should have for someone to get a franchise is it's a substantial company. It's not. It's a
But I'm asking you a different question. I don't want to interrupt you. I understand that there are those layers. My question is, aren't there drivers who may even live in Santa Monica and who are operating out of Santa Monica, who are operating within the rubric of something like an independent taxi owners association, but in fact are not part of any of these franchises? Or let me put
they
it
shouldn't be.
different.
If they aren't part of the franchises, they shouldn't be operating
that
here.
are part of an association but are not governed by an owner who's leasing the cab to them, but rather own their own taxis.
Well, I don't know the business well enough to say, but there could be people who own their own cabs. That's possible. But they don't have individually any kind of license to operate here. They only do it through, if that's the case, they'd have to do it through a company that has the franchise.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Larmore.
Okay, thank you.
Next speaker. Welcome, and you have 4 minutes.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mayor Ted Werner and Honorable Council Member. Good evening. Wow, you guys look amazing and wonderful. You didn't age since the last time I saw you about 2 years ago. I'm definitely in the wrong business. I hope some of you recognize me. This is Ahmed Salim from CFO of Taxi and a partner owner. I got some gray hair. Got old. And maybe the worst than that is I'm losing some hair. Lost about 80% of my hair, just like the taxi business. But before I start, I want to thank my father who insisted to come today and donate 2 minutes for me. Thank you very much. And I would like to thank Ms. Francis Stephan and Cheryl Shavers for the tremendous work. Ladies, you really deserve more recognition. Thank you very much. First, and since I came from an accounting and statistics background, and I love numbers because they can only make sense and can always draw logical conclusion, the number of recent calls and flags in our city keeps declining annually. As the staff report shows, a drop from 7,500,000, 750,000 in 2013 to only 150,000 in 2017, and the figures in 2018 are way less than 150,000 calls, which is a loss of 80% of taxi business. And the remaining 20% can be served efficiently with a maximum total of 50 or 60 taxi cabs. Taking in consideration the two major standards, the excellent quality of service and livable wages for our drivers. In 2013, Taxi served close to 300,000 calls, which is double of what we have today. With 63 cars only, Taxi was able to do that. And with excellence, and almost 95% or 99% of 98% of excellence. In 2014, we served almost 200,000 calls, which is still higher than what we have today. And in 2016, Taxi were able to serve 110 or received 110 calls, 100,010 calls. 2 years ago, and here in the same room, Taxi requested a reduction of the number of the total cabs of 300 maximum. And for the exact reasons, from 300 to 120 cabs. Keep in mind the same exact reasons, maintaining an excellent quality of service and livable wages for the drivers. Sandy, who talked the first one, he gave me an example. I like to mention it. He said there is taxi drivers are now homeless and sleeping in their vans. They don't have homes. They cannot afford. They are homeless. This is a big issue and has a big impact with the safety. With this requested 2 years ago a reduction, the city staff as well had the same approach to reduce the numbers, but the other four companies, other four franchisees, they formed a coalition and they fought tooth and nail to keep the 300 taxi cabs. And unfortunately, the decision was in their favor, not in the driver's favor. Now it looks like history repeating itself. And it is a mistake. It's not a mistake to make a mistake, but it is a mistake to repeat the same mistake. Your city does not need many cabs. We request that you consider drivers that has been carrying the city of Santa Monica in their shoulders. And in order to do that, we support the city staff recommendation that no company should be permitted to use taxi stands or pick up flags unless it holds a franchise. Why would you allow a company that has no business to take from the city of Santa Monica drivers the crumbs? Oh, that's it?
Thank you, Mr. Soham.
Thank you very much.
And Ayman Radwan.
Hi, my name is Ayman Radwan. I'm thankful and humbled to be in front of you. We love the city of Santa Monica. It has a special place in our heart. We've been serving the city for 30 years. Dedicated. We love the city. We love the resident, the senior. And I just want to speak about if we allow other companies to be in the stands. First, the stands are limited. There are only, if I'm right, around 75 stands around the city that the other companies are fighting for. In LA, if you ask them, would you allow the stands to be open in Los Angeles? They will say simply no, but they want it to be open here. And if we allow everyone to come in a stand, let's assume Yellow Cab, for example. They have 700 cabs. They will be all over the city, flooding the city with their vehicles. There are 9 companies in Los Angeles that are controlling the entire LA. We are dedicated in Santa Monica. We've been servicing Santa Monica with everything, with our heart. And today I would like to let you know that we will be able to make Santa Monica proud, give Santa Monica what they want. We have 60% of the market, and the 40% that Yellow Cab mentioned is all of them combined. So the franchise started because we wanted to make it safe in the taxi stand. We wanted to make it environmentally friendly by having certain standards. That's what we did, and we would like to keep it the same way, and we are very proud to be serving this beautiful city. And I'm open to any question if you have any.
Apparently you were so compelling there are no questions, so thank you.
Thank you.
And that concludes
and taxi is not for sale.
Okay, that concludes the public input. Council members, the matter is before us. Okay, any more questions of staff? If not, we'll go, if nobody has any more questions, then Councilmember McEwen, jump into this.
Now, of course, we're not awarding franchises tonight. You made that clear at the outset, and you maybe need to say it again because the testimony sort of aimed toward franchises. And what we're talking about is a policy that would give a company or companies substantially located in Santa Monica serving this community a hometown advantage, not a hometown monopoly, because other companies could still take phone calls, apps, and all that. But it would give somebody who chose to be located here a hometown advantage. And as I've looked at this matter, that makes sense to me, particularly in an era where it's obvious that being a cab driver is getting tougher and tougher. I don't want to make it harder for the people who drive for companies that commit to a particular community to make a living because they're having their living poached by larger regional cab companies that can swoop in during peak times and take the money, but not be here for the residents of Santa Monica on those non-peak times when a substantially located company would be here. So I will make the motion that we amend Chapter 649, modifying the taxi cab franchise regulations. I think the adoption of the resolution will have to be a separate motion, but I'll make that motion.
Second.
All right, so the first matter, amending the Chapter 6.49, is moved by McEwen, seconded by Davis. Councilmember Vasquez.
I guess one of my questions in legal actually basically said that you needed 50 plus 1 trips to define as it being a local, substantially located, right?
So the state law says predominant. So the usual situation is that taxi companies operate in LA and Santa Monica. So that was the shorthand we use. It is possible that if a company operates in 4 different cities, the company that operates the city that operates most predominantly, so it could be below if it's plausible.
That was my question, because one of the testimony, this individual was saying that he does 40%, but that could be 50 plus, or the majority of his trips, right?
But I believe staff's evaluation is that even under that criteria, there's only, of the 4 franchisees, only 1 company meet the criteria.
Well, that remains to be seen, because I guess when we do the franchise, that'll come back to us, right, in their analysis, I'm assuming.
That's right. But
right now, we're not dealing with that. And then I guess the other issue along those lines, while I support the fact that, you know, we should support a company that's located in Santa Monica, I guess the problem I have with that is that I know some of the companies that testified here, while the company may be located, let's say, outside, it could be on the west side, but not specifically in Santa Monica, the cab drivers own their cabs, and they actually could live in Santa Monica potentially.
So
or may live in Santa Monica, I don't know. So how does that, if they're the owner of their vehicle, is that considered local?
So the state law does allow the city to regulate either on a company-wide level or driver level or both. The city's historical policy has been to regulate on a company level, and that's why the staff has brought forward their recommendations the way they are. The council could certainly direct staff to look at regulating either exclusively on a driver level or on a combination of driver and company levels. That would be somewhat of a departure from our historical practice, but it is within the council's direction to direct staff to go that way.
And then I guess my next question is maybe more to the maker of the motion. Is it your intention, what's obvious, I mean, we're not talking about giving them a franchise or an exclusive right now, but is your motion basically to direct staff to go to meet with the, I guess, the current 4 operators and come up with a proposal that would come to us with a recommendation of who they, whether it's 1 or 2 franchises that would move forward?
The motion is to amend Chapter 649 as recommended by staff.
That's it.
It's not to
Just
direct
that.
any further discussion. That's going to happen. Obviously, these companies are going to want to find out what their status is.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis.
Well, I just want to say that, you know, obviously the taxi cab industry has undergone a tremendous amount of change over the last few years, and we've wrestled with it on an ongoing basis. I do want to point out, I think as Councilmember McEwen said, that this isn't about granting anyone a monopoly. Any one of the cab companies that came and spoke this evening are perfectly capable of picking up prearranged rides here in Santa Monica. But, for example, as someone pointed out, the city of Los Angeles is not going to let Taxi camp out at their taxi zones. And so why we should allow cabs that are located, substantially located, I guess is the term of art, at the city of LA, to take spaces at Santa Monica zones, that any logic there escapes me. I know some of the speakers said that they could become substantially located in Santa Monica, and I think we have a criteria set by our city attorney's office, and if they choose to do so, they can choose to do so. Nobody is precluding them from moving their headquarters to Santa Monica, and I'm sure we would welcome them with open arms. But as things currently stand, it looks like we have one company that meets the criteria, and I think as Mr. Larmore pointed out, the problem is that our leverage over these companies has been substantially reduced by the state law. And some of the companies said they supported the state law, so I hope they understand that. But by reducing our leverage, in order for us to provide high-quality, safe taxi service to our residents, we need to have the licensing leverage, if you will, over them. And if we don't have that licensing control over companies that are substantially located in other jurisdictions, then we're not able to impose the same kinds of requirements on them. So, as again, circling back to what Councilmember McEwen is saying, this is just having a home field advantage, but not necessarily for the purpose of favoring a local business, although it has that effect, but it is the only way we can ensure that the taxi services that are primarily available to our residents at taxi stands and through ride hailing, as well as prearranged apps and things like that, are high quality, fair services. And so I think this is the direction the state law has pushed us. And so for those of you who supported the state law, you know, you live by the sword, you die by the sword sort of thing. So I think that this is the appropriate way for us to go.
All right, seeing no more further discussion, we have a motion by McEwen and second by Davis to introduce for first reading an ordinance amending Chapter 6.49 of the Santa Monica Municipal Code modifying provisions of the taxi cab franchise regulations. And we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember McCune?
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilmember Himmerich?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Day?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connor?
Yes.
And Mayor Winter?
Yes, so that passes unanimously. And let's go on to the next agenda item, please. No, pause, please.
I'm sorry, but we still need to do the resolution.
Oh, you are absolutely right. I stand corrected. I'm thinking Councilmember McEwen might want to make a resolution. Oh, I caught him with his mouth full. So I'll move that we adopt the resolution establishing maximum taximeter rates.
Second.
Seeing no further discussion, let's have a roll call vote.
Councilmember O'Connor?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Day?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Himmerich?
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilmember McCune?
Yes.
And Mayor Winter?
Yes, so that also passes unanimously, and thank you for the clerk for catching that.
Next, we have item 7C, introduction and first reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 4.55 of the Santa Monica Municipal Code to authorize and regulate electric vehicles in city parking lots after hours. And you have no request to speak.
Mayor, in an abundance of caution, I step down on matters pertaining to electric vehicles. I have no conflict of interest here per se, but I do want to avoid any possibility of the appearance of a conflict of interest. So I will step out, and given the hour, I may not come back, depending on how long you take with this.
Well, just noting that we cannot do the boards and commissions without you, so just think about that. All right, welcome.
Good evening. Hi, Mayor and Council members. My name is Ariana Vito, and I work in the Office of Sustainability and the Environment. And I'm here tonight to discuss our proposed recommendation to amend the municipal code in order to allow electric vehicle drivers to charge overnight at park charging stations. So before I get into the details, I just wanted to provide some context regarding our electric vehicle adoption rates in Santa Monica, as well as our charging infrastructure. So as of January of this year, there were approximately 2,500 electric vehicles registered within the city. So this includes both battery electric vehicles as well as plug-in hybrids. And we currently have about 100 public charging ports, mostly located in downtown Santa Monica in our parking garages and lots. And as you know, about 70% of Santa Monica residents live in multi-unit dwellings, which tend to have a number of barriers associated with them regarding electric vehicle charging installations, mostly due to the high installation costs, insufficient electrical capacity, and oftentimes lack of parking spaces in order to assign charging stations to them. And so as more and more residents switch over to electric vehicles, it just becomes more important to have the public charging infrastructure available and to help provide charging options for them. And for some background, the Electric Vehicle Action Plan, as you know, was adopted last year in November and has an overarching goal to support electric vehicle adoption through increased charging infrastructure. We have a short-term goal of about 300 public chargers by 2020. And at the council meeting when the Electric Vehicle Action Plan was adopted, council directed staff to maximize the hours in which any charger in a public space is available. And this direction was given in response to public comment requesting access to the electric vehicle charging stations currently located at Virginia Avenue Park overnight. And so this map here shows the purple markers are for the existing public charging stations not located in parks. The green are the proposed Park charging stations, and then the one orange is Virginia Avenue Park, so the only existing park charger. And so as you can see, they're mostly downtown, and the proposed charging stations and parks are in primarily residential neighborhoods. So allowing them to use chargers overnight would serve residents who currently don't have other public charging options available to them. And this is a breakdown of the current and planned charging stations in parks. So in addition to Virginia, we have Clover, Gandara, Marine, Memorial Park, and Airport Park eventually. This is a photo of one of the newer charge point stations at Virginia Avenue Park. And these sites were mostly selected because they're parks with parking lots and the space to accommodate charging stations. And so, for the details, the proposed recommendation here is to amend existing code of the Park and Beach Code, Chapter 4.55, which currently prohibits remaining or being present in the city park between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m., during which time the parks are closed. And so our recommendation is to amend this chapter in order to authorize and regulate electric vehicles in city park parking lots after hours. So the goal here really is just to provide access to an existing resource, which is currently unable to be utilized during the night. And what is a city park parking lot? I know it doesn't really roll off the tongue that easily, but it's specifically defined in the ordinance as these parks located here, and then any other parking lot established by a city council. And these are just specifically defined in order to eliminate any confusion over which locations this amendment applies to. And so for the proposed amendment, it's to provide an exemption to the park closure rule in order to allow EV drivers to be in a designated parking lot, park parking lot from 11 p.m. to 6 when they're engaged in one of these following specific activities related to EV charging. So they either have to be parking or unparking their EV, plugging in or unplugging, departing from or entering, or accompanying a person engaged in these activities. So just to be clear, there's no staying in your vehicle while your car is charging. Just for safety reasons, staff felt it was best to limit the options to these specific activities. And how this will be managed, so they will be smart charging stations, which have the capability to notify drivers via text message when their time limit is up or their battery is full, whichever comes first. But during the night, the existing 3-hour time limit won't be in effect. So we don't want to require people to come back to their cars in the middle of the night. So basically what we're doing is just allowing them to enter the park to plug in and charge, and then during the daytime hours, the regular 6 to 11, the 3-hour time limit will still stay in effect. And staff will return to council probably early next year to recommend regulations for vehicles that exceed the time limits, just to encourage and incentivize drivers to not exceed their allotted time limit. So in conclusion, our recommendation is to amend Chapter 4.55 to authorize and regulate electric vehicles in city park parking lots after hours in order to provide this additional charging resource. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cole, you were in the queue. Did you have something to elaborate there, or was that? All right. Councilmember McEwen has a question.
Ms. Vito, you and I have worked together over the past couple of years on another issue that'll be on the agenda later, but am I correct? This is your first presentation before the whole city council?
It's actually my second. My first was for the modification of a charge point contract.
I must not have been present that night.
That's okay, don't worry.
I always try to acknowledge the first timers because I know it's tough to get up here in front of the whole council. You did a great job.
It's even harder the second time. Councilmember Vasquez.
Especially with this crew. But on the charging station, the one that we currently have in Virginia Park, is it just one that's there now?
So there are 2 dual port stations, so 4 cars can currently charge there at a time.
And moving forward in the planned ones, is that what you're looking to do at all the other parks, or are we looking to expand it beyond 4?
So I have just a little table that shows. So these are our plans for the other parks at this point.
When you say 4, though, is that
That's
like
the total ports. So it's typically would be 2 dual port stations.
2 dual port? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess in your presentation you mentioned that if you leave it, well, I guess if you check in after hours, basically you're not restricted to just the 3 hours during the day, for example.
Correct.
So that
Correct.
means that a person could leave their car charging. Basically, they'd leave their car overnight. In
Yes,
the park,
exactly.
which is
that's
illegal.
The goal. Mm-hmm.
And at Virginia, I think Virginia Park might be the only one where we actually lock the parking lot, right?
I don't know of a physical lock. I mean,
I thought there was a gate that swung open at Virginia where the other ones don't have it. Because isn't when the park closed, don't they close the parking lot at Virginia?
does anyone know? I don't think so.
I thought there was a gate. Maybe I'm thinking of probably Penmar. But okay.
I'll double check, but I don't believe
So that's not going to be a problem, obviously, if that's the case.
I don't think so.
Thanks. Councilmember Hemorrhage.
So my question is this. So we have, 14 charging stations right now and 2,500 electric vehicles, right? Are we worried that, because I know that most of them take longer to park than 2 or 3 hours, right, the amount of time at a meter. Are you worried that people are going to get home from work and create lines around these to leave them on these chargers at night? Because I would be worried about that.
Just to clarify at first, there are about 100 public chargers total. So this is just for parks. I just wanted to clarify. I wasn't sure if that's what you meant or not.
Oh, so it's 1 in 25.
But so there is currently a waitlist system. So you can, during the daytime hours, if all the chargers are occupied, you can be entered into a queue. But you get an alert message and you have a certain window of time to accept the reservation and then show up at the charging station to plug in. So I don't think we're necessarily worried about a queue of cars at the park because they'll be alerted if and when their time comes up.
So let's say you wanted to charge starting at 11 at night, right? You want that spot. Can you sign up for it in advance?
Not currently. So it's kind of complicated. The waitlist system, that you can only have one waitlist setting apply to a certain station, and you have to set the maximum amount of time the vehicle can be there. And so during the day, we have to set the time for 3 hours, and so we can't modify it to apply it to the night because it's more than 3 hours.
Right.
So the only way, what we could do, which might be an option, we'll be discussing this at our next EV subcommittee meeting, we could potentially remove the waitlist system during the daytime and then implement it during the nighttime. We'll just have to see.
Thank you.
Councilmember McEwen.
Well, I think we're done with the questions. This makes all the sense in the world, so I move that we introduce for first reading the ordinance.
I think it was clearly moved by McEwen, and we'll give the second to O'Connor. Seeing no further discussion, we will have a voice vote on introduction of first reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 4.55 of the Santa Monica Municipal Code to authorize and regulate electric vehicles in city park parking lots after hours. And I look forward to the day. No, I don't look forward to the day we create another city park parking lot. We don't need more parking lots. But that's a mouthful. All right,
I know.
Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember O'Connor?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Himmerich?
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilmember McKeown?
Yes.
And Mayor Winter?
Yes. So that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. You did an
Thank
excellent
you.
job in your second time around.
Why, thank you.
We look forward to putting you through the grinder on your third appearance.
Next, we have item 8A, selection of renewable electricity default rate for residential customers, and you have 5 requests to speak.
Welcome, Mr. Wong.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Garrett Wong. I am a Senior Sustainability Analyst in the Office of Sustainability and the Environment. I'm also your staff liaison to the Clean Power Alliance of Southern California, the Southern California's community choice aggregation provider. So tonight before you, we have an exciting opportunity to take a significant step to becoming a carbon neutral community. We have the opportunity to establish a default renewable energy tier for all residential customers as we transition to community choice aggregation service. Pictured here on the title slide is a wind project, which is actually being actively procured by the Clean Power Alliance right now as one of its first energy supplies. This is a unique opportunity for a CCA, especially one that is starting up so soon, to actually have a physical project that it can point to and say that our power is being provided by local resources. To refresh you, our community emissions come from various sources, primarily from vehicles, as we are very much a vehicle-heavy community, but also from our buildings, from our electricity use and our natural gas use. And so the way we envision reducing emissions from all of these different sources come through a variety of different measures. To address our vehicle emissions, we need to take action through improving sustainable mobility options, as we are all very familiar with, as well as transitioning to electric vehicles, which you just heard about in the item before. When it comes to electricity use, transitioning to 100% renewable electricity is the way to mitigate our emissions from that sector. And then as we look to natural gas use, we will ultimately have to electrify those building systems, as well as look at other alternative sources of natural gas. So to remind you and remind the community what is community choice aggregation, the existing utility, Southern California Edison, primarily provides you with reliable power. When you turn on the lights, you do not anticipate any difference, but they are there to provide you the service of delivering the electricity to your home and to your building. They are primarily responsible for the infrastructure that delivers the energy to our buildings. But where our energy comes from is now what we can have a choice over, and that's where the Clean Power Alliance and that's what community choice aggregation gets involved with. Local governments can aggregate the demand of their communities. They can go out to the open market, procure power, and then we sell it to the customer through Edison's poles and wires. Edison still provides the reliability that you expect. They still provide you with customer service. You still get programs through Edison, largely based on efficiency as well as infrastructure. But the Clean Power Alliance will be the one who will be delivering you the energy as a commodity. So what are the benefits of becoming a part of a CCA program? For the customer, it means that we have more options. You have more options in terms of where you get your power from and who provides it, which also means that you have more competitive pricing. By having more local control over where your energy comes from, we have the opportunity to increase the renewable energy that is supplying our electricity. As far as the community goes, we have the opportunity to, again, bring local control back into the community. We have the opportunity to invest ratepayer dollars back into the community through incentive programs and infrastructure investments, things that can help to continue to decarbonize our community. And it also affords us the opportunity to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, as I mentioned before. So this has been some time in the making. As you may recall, we had embarked on a feasibility study with a handful of cities in the West Side and the South Bay area. That feasibility study was then carried to LA County, who was encouraged to move forward with developing a county-wide feasibility study and implementation plan for a much larger community choice aggregation program. And that program was formed under what was called LACE, or the Los Angeles Community Choice Energy, which has now been renamed as the Clean Power Alliance. And at the end of 2017, this council adopted a resolution to become a member of the Clean Power Alliance. So the way that this also works, we have to select default tiers for our customers once they get transitioned into CCA service. And so the opportunity was brought before council in February of this year to make that selection for commercial accounts as well as our municipal accounts. So that was done in February, and now we have the opportunity to make that same decision for our residents tonight, after which the Clean Power Alliance board will finalize their rates for those customers. We anticipate that service will start for all customers, all residential customers, in February of next year, and all commercial customers will be served starting in summer of next year. The Clean Power Alliance is made up of currently 32 public agencies, both LA County and Ventura County, as far north as Ojai, as far south as the Hawaiian Gardens and Downey, as far east as Alhambra. It's a very diverse organization representing a wide swath of Southern California. It is the largest community choice aggregation program in California. The Clean Power Alliance has selected 3 tiers to offer its new customers. The 36%, which is now called Lean Power, when compared to Edison's typical utility bill, would offer a 1 to 2% discount. When we look at the emissions impact when it comes to electricity, the potential for reducing emissions would be about 1%, but the overall emissions impact compared to 1990 levels for total community emissions would effectively be minimal. The 50% option, which is called Clean Power, would offer a modest discount up to 1% relative to Edison's utility bill. The total reductions from electricity would be about 10% if all the community were subscribed to that 50% tier. And the relative impact to total community emissions compared to 1990 levels would be around 27%. If the council were to select the 100% default for all customers, the 100% green power, that would increase utility bills by approximately 7 to 9%, and we'll discuss what that means on a month-to-month basis. But we do not anticipate any net increase on utility bills for those who are considered, those who are qualified as CARE customers or low-income qualified customers. The emissions reduction from the electricity sector would essentially be complete, which would be 19%, but our relative emissions reductions compared to 1990 levels, all things being equal, would be 35%. So we talked about what the relative impacts would be on a percentage basis. This is what it would look like on a dollar basis. So when considering the average customer consumption and the average utility bill, you can look starting from left to right. Edison would be offering probably a 34% renewable energy product to all customers. And those, you can see the costs in the blue would be the typical average bill. The orange column would be the CARE customer, which enjoys approximately 30% discount. So as you go across to the higher tiers of renewable energy, you see that the costs increase modestly, but the CARE customer will retain their same discount and will not see any net increase to their utility bills regardless of the tier that they are selected. But you can see that their discount is relative to the tier itself. So on the 36% lean power, you can see it's 46 cents or $46.23, but it's capped at $46.69, which should provide parity to Edison CARE customers. So what are customer options? When this transition happens, up until this transition happens, as it happens, and any time after it happens, these options will always remain. There's no time certain that these customers have to make these decisions. They can make them at any time. So the first option is to do nothing. If council makes a decision to select 100% as the tier default, that is what they will receive. They have the option to opt down to a lower tier, to 50 or 36%. They have the option to opt out and remain a customer with Edison. Again, they can opt down to lower tiers, they can opt up to a higher tier, or they can opt out of the program at any time, or they can opt back into the program at any time. Just another thing to keep in mind is that we receive new electricity accounts all the time as new projects get constructed, as people move in and out of the city. So these options have to remain available to everyone all the time. In terms of customer outreach, once the rates have been finalized, they will be notices sent out to all customers. There's a legal requirement to send out 4 notices, 2 before enrollment and 2 after enrollment. And those will be sent out through the utility bill. There will be an insert that looks like this, and it will tell people what changes are coming, why that change is important, and what their options are. There will also be a rate comparison mailer, which is typically sent out during the summertime. So this will be after the change happens. But it will describe for people, again, what that relative cost impact would be based off of their rate. Staff and local partners, we will also conduct outreach. We'll do so through the city's various communication channels, our website, social media, and we will also provide in-person presentations to people upon request, and we will also provide presentations to specific stakeholder groups to make sure that people are very aware of this pending change and the benefits that it provides and the options that they have. There are several communities who have already made the 100% tier as their default selection. Those are City of South Pasadena, Ventura, Ojai, Rolling Hills Estates, Culver City, West Hollywood, and the County of Ventura has also made the selection for unincorporated residents. So our recommendation tonight for you is to make the selection for 100% renewable energy as the default. Your alternative actions would be to select either the 50% or 36% as the default. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Councilman McEwen has a question.
I think most people are used to the idea of reducing electricity use and therefore their impacts by doing things like buying a more efficient refrigerator, that sort of thing. In this case, is there anything the customer has to do at the home end to reap the benefits of this other than to sign up?
Just turn on the lights.
And the lights won't glow green all of a sudden or something, will they?
No, they won't go glow green. From one day to the next, you will not experience any change in your electricity service. It will be, for those who are very particular about their electricity bills, the electricity bill is made up of many different components, which are fairly complex, and you will see several new line items which will delineate that the kilowatt hour portion of your utility bill is now coming from the Clean Power Alliance.
So let's look at what might make somebody feel good about seeing what might even be an additional charge on their bill. I think you said that the 100% renewable tier would mean a 35% reduction in impact on greenhouse gases.
If the whole community
let's assume the whole community does.
If the whole community subscribes to 100%, Santa Monica's community-wide emissions would be 35% below 1990 levels.
And I saw also in the presentation that behind transportation, electricity generation is the highest greenhouse gas creator at, I think you said 19%?
Correct.
So that's almost 20. So if it's 35% and that's 20% of the impact, that means that in February of next year, overnight, if we all chose the 100% tier, we'd reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 7% for the community overnight. 20% of 35%, 1/5 of 35, 7.
So I'm sorry. The electricity constitutes about 19% of our total community-wide emissions.
Right. So if we dropped 35% of that impact.
No, I apologize. If we eliminated effectively all of that, if we eliminated the whole electricity generation source of emissions, our relative impact to 1990 levels would be 35% below 1990 levels community-wide. If you recall...
And this would happen overnight?
Correct. If you recall...
Is there anything else that this community could do that would have that kind of an impact? This seems unprecedented.
This is the most significant action that people can take with the least amount of inconvenience, the least amount of change they can make in their daily lifestyle. Not to downplay any other actions that we try to promote throughout the community, whether it's the way you get around or what you eat or how you consume. This one is the one that everyone can participate in. And beyond buying renewable electricity, we are establishing a new community serving entity. The Clean Power Alliance is going to be very much a community-focused organization that is really going to incentivize and provide more investment in local projects, local energy systems, local jobs, and local greening of our communities in our vehicles and in our buildings. So really this is just the first step, and that's really where a lot of the value will continue to demonstrate itself.
You mentioned vehicles. Now, if you already own an electric car, this means that the impact of your electric car, which is now translated to pollution someplace else in the Southwest, you're now clean. You're driving really clean.
Correct.
Thank you.
So just to follow up on Councilman McEwen's thought, historically, at least in recent years, along with the incentive and programs that OSE has offered to get people to reduce their energy consumption, Edison has been a player in that field. They're constantly sending you information about, they'll come and do an audit, you go to various community events, and then for a long time they're giving out compact CFLs. I've yet to see anybody give me out a more expensive light bulb at a community event, but an LED bulb. But so when we make this transition, will Edison still have the same commitment to its customers to assist them with the efforts to reduce their electrical bill, along with what the city does?
Yes, so all utility customers in California pay what's called a public goods charge. That public goods charge is aggregated up into the Public Utilities Commission, and then the Public Utilities Commission then authorizes the utilities, or essentially requires the utilities to make good on the state's goals to continue to reduce energy use and provide efficiency programs and incentive programs for things like electric vehicles. So that will not change. There are new players in the market in terms of who can deliver energy efficiency programs. CCAs themselves can become program administrators for energy efficiency programs. It's a regulatory process to get involved in that space, but we are eligible to take advantage of those incentive dollars as well. But all ratepayers should be able to access them still.
So as we do the outreach to the community about this, which while we've been talking about it for quite some time, when I talk to residents around town, they're a little surprised that this is coming. Most of them pleasantly surprised and excited about it. But to the residential electrical consumer who wants to do the right thing and go the 100% tier, but is a little concerned about that potential 7% increase in their bill, will we be also doing outreach about these alternatives, whether it's through the city or Edison, et cetera? Your bill may go up 7%, but you have an opportunity to easily cut your consumption by 20 to 10%, and that will offset any increase. Is that part of the rollout plan?
Yes, absolutely. So both the Clean Power Alliance as well as the city. So the Clean Power Alliance has a communications toolkit in which we will leverage to do outreach to community members. We are also continually providing efficiency resources. So we are the office that gives out the LED light bulbs to help people reduce their energy use. And then we're also working on other unique outreach kind of methods. So we're developing a sustainability lending toolkit that will be lended out through the library for people to kind of understand where energy is used and where it's potentially wasted in their homes. And so those will be other unique ways that we can message the community about saving energy as well as saving money.
Great, because while it's great if we can go to 100% renewable, if we reduce our consumption of renewable energy citywide, that makes it more available to other communities.
That's correct.
Right, thanks. So seeing no other questions, thank you, Mr. Wong, and we'll hear from the public. Starting with Denise Barton for 1 minute, Chris Gutierrez, Antonella Borjas, Ferris Kawar, and Harvey Eder.
Good evening. One would have to wonder why the city would want to get into the energy business at an additional cost of 7 to 9% for the city to be the middleman. And in this action, you will be taking control of all renewable energy on the city's grid, from solar panels, including residents. Then you'll be charging those with solar panels 7 to 9% more to use the new renewable energy from it. Then on page 1 of the staff report, it says this action is to give additional choices for electricity, which is fine if it's the consumer's choice. But at the bottom of page 1, it states, February 2019, every residential customer will be put on the highest rate electricity. And the only way to get off of it is by opting out on your time. That doesn't seem like much of a choice to me. It sounds more like dictatorship, which will also be a problem for elderly and disabled tenants, as well as possibly wiping out part of their credit history. In addition to your math not working, if you have a 7 to 9% premium increase, that takes the discount rate down to 21 to 23%. Thank you.
Chris Gutierrez.
Hi, good evening. It's fabulous to be with you this evening, and I'm speaking for the Climate Action Santa Monica, CASM, as its co-chair, and the program director for the Climate Corps. CASM supports enthusiastically that 100% renewable energy be the default choice. We are proud to have been part of the history of making this come to fore. We had in 2014 the first forum on a community choice aggregation to begin that engagement with the community to understand this. We are prepared to help get the word out and to continue to engage the community on what it can mean to be part of a completely 100% renewable energy driven system. It's also one of the requirements of our sustainability rights ordinance, as we called out climate, a livable climate in that ordinance, and we will be helping to fulfill it with this choice. People care, and they are paying attention. In the summer of 2018, the Climate Corps, our high school and college youth, were out engaging the community and surveyed over 923 people. 59% of those people said that they already consider climate change hugely or a lot in their daily choices. 2/3 of those respondents also already use LED bulbs to conserve energy. We gave out many of those with our partnership with the OSC. It's incumbent upon us now to pursue that engagement, and we are thrilled to do that. Young people know the threat that they're facing. Many of our Climate Corps, many of whom wrote you today or in the last few days, felt urgent need to be a part of this engagement. We are thrilled that this commitment is now real. We waited a long time to get here, since '94 with the sustainability plan being initiated, '99 with the city's municipality advancing it, and here we are now to make that choice real. Thank you.
Thank you. Antonella Borjas.
Hello, council members. I am Antonella Borjas, a 9th grader from Samo High. I'm here to agree with Santa Monica making 100% renewable energy the default choice. We should make it the default because it's so much better for the environment and it won't hurt anybody. When we are using electricity that's not renewable, we are typically burning fossil fuels. But if we were to change that to 100% renewable energy, we would be making our Santa Monica cleaner and overall better for the environment. You know, I didn't know that our energy wasn't already renewable. But we should know what type of energy we are using and if that's causing even more greenhouse gases and even more pollution to our wonderful city. I hope you think not only of yourselves, but also think of us, not only as kids who are being handed these things, but as a community. Santa Monica needs to be a part of this momentous opportunity, following other cities. Santa Monica's housing includes many beautiful modern buildings, but those buildings aren't actually modern while they are still using energy that's not renewable. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Ferris Kawar, looks like.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. I'm a local resident, father of 2 young daughters, and I work at Santa Monica College. And I speak to students all the time about these issues, and they are overwhelmed by what their generation is facing. But I tell them that the solutions that we need are not that far out there. They're off the shelf right now, and we are a community that is ready to, show that we can do this. And we know that from the latest IPCC report that we have 12 years to make radical changes in the way we generate our electricity and transportation. And this is an opportunity for our community to show the rest of the country, the rest of the world, that it can be done. And we've been a leader for so many years, and this is a very small financial impact for us to gain such a huge benefit. I really hope that we can get there tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Harvey Eder.
Hello there, Council, Mayor. I'm Harvey Eder. I'm speaking for myself and for the Public Solar Power Coalition. I'll also be making comments in public comment. There's more I'd like to say, but agree with the last 2 speakers and have concerns with the first speaker. I'd like to say it was a good job, but I've got problems like that. I've heard like 17% for electricity, and 50% for transportation, and the rest for buildings and gas, natural gas. So the drop to go 100% for electricity without transportation and the other, it doesn't get you 35% below 1990 levels, which were already. The state says we have 450 parts per million CO2 equivalent now. The real numbers are about double that. There's go into that. Now's not the time. The concerns about low income. I did a study for the PUC. I want to incorporate it by reference. It's out at the Air District, and it's a low income solar equity program to try. I brought this up to the rent folks here, and like to pursue it more. And it fits in kind of with community solar, which has not been pursued by this entity and is being slammed by Edison. And they said that was a total failure. And there are other states that are doing this and are working this out, and they're trying to take it over now. And just made a proposal about a week ago. I was at the PUC, and they have this withdrawal fee, the PCIA, and they say there's going to be, they okayed an alternative decision to increase it considerably, and this is being considered. Also, $42 billion was spent by Public Policy Institute of California in 2003, and they were going to buy out PG&E's transmission and distribution system when they went bankrupt for $1. It fell through under a Republican governor through Burton,
Thank you,
and
Mr. Eder.
it can be condemned right now.
Thank you,
And
Mr. Eder.
this issue of the investor-owned utilities and the future of the
Thank you, Mr.
transition
Eder.
have to
Everybody
be
gets
dealt
2
with.
minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council member, the matter is before us.
I have one more question for Mr. Wong. A member of the public intimated that somehow this would be a negative for people who have solar panels on their houses. As I understand it, CPA would be more dedicated by far than Edison to distributed energy resources like solar panels. Can you tell us a little bit about how that would work?
So
there's a buyback of electricity from solar panels, right?
Correct. So for existing solar customers, they're typically on what's called net energy metering rates. So your electricity meter will essentially go back and forth from when you're generating electricity from when you're consuming electricity. At the end of the year, if you have generated more than you've actually consumed, then you will actually get paid for that electricity. Under the Clean Power Alliance rates, those are now more favorable than what they are currently under Edison. So Edison's kind of buyback rate is around 2 or 3 cents, but the CPA rate is actually closer to 6.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
And just to elaborate, since I have solar panels, the other option is if you have not enough roof space to completely offset your electrical generation, that electricity which you have to get through the utility at this point is less than 100% renewable, and so when you can't offset all of your consumption with panels on your roof, then what you'll be buying of that as we go forward with this will be completely clean. So that you have no overall impact on your rates.
It makes for a great option for renters and commercial tenants who don't have control over their buildings and are unable to install solar panels themselves.
So we need a motion.
As Santa Monica's director on the Clean Power Alliance, and I thank the council for appointing me to that position, I'm really happy to bring this home at last, and I'll move that we adopt the 100% renewable as the default tier.
And as the alternate, I'll second that.
I think that seems appropriate. So, seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is to select the 100% renewable tier for the Clean Power Alliance that we're about to embark on, and we'll have a roll call vote.
Councilmember McKim?
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilmember Hemmerich?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connor?
Yes.
And Mayor Winter?
Yes, so that passes unanimously, and great work, and we look forward to even further reductions in our carbon profile.
Thank you.
Next, we have item 10A, request from the Commission on the Status of Women regarding protections for hotel workers, and you have 6 requests to speak.
Good evening, Mayor Winter and council members. My name is Sylvia Gazarian, and I chair the Commission on the Status of Women. Today I'm speaking on behalf of the COSW about the letter that we sent on 9/13, and I'm here with my fellow commissioners. In 2015, the City Council unanimously adopted the Convention on All Forms of Discrimination Against Women resolution and delegated oversight to the COSW. Our city ratified CEDAW, an international human rights treaty to condemn all forms of discrimination, retaliation, and violence against women and girls. Our duties and responsibilities under CEDAW include achieving gender equity in political participation and representation, income and earnings, and public and personal safety. The COSW's mission is to advocate for policies relevant to women and girls, which include protecting women in the workplace and standing up against all forms of violence. We are concerned about the safety and equity for women in the service sector that is the backbone of Santa Monica's thriving tourism economy. Ensuring women in the hotel and tourism industry have equal opportunity is important because of the sheer number of such jobs in Santa Monica and because workers in those industries often find themselves at increased risk of sexual harassment and assault. Women in these jobs are often physically isolated and also rely on tips, where pleasing the client or customer is paramount. It is well documented that sexual harassment and assault is of particular threat for women who work in hotels and must enter hotel guest rooms. Requiring hotel employers to provide hotel workers who must work in guest rooms with emergency devices and protecting them from retaliation when they use them is common sense action that will keep women who work in one of Santa Monica's most important industries safer and will increase gender equity, recruitment, and retention in the workplace because women will know there are requirements meant to keep them safe when they come to work in Santa Monica hotels. Sexual harassment policies are important, but do little good in the immediate moment when a woman cleaning a hotel room is unexpectedly cornered, trapped, harassed, inappropriately touched, or at risk of rape in a space with no cameras and a little way out. A woman in such a situation needs a quick and easy way to summon help. Emergency devices will meet that need, and ensuring comprehensive education and training with these devices will protect workers, guests, and the community alike. Just as the city has taken action a few years ago to ensure hotel workers have a living wage and paid sick days, the city should now take action to address the safety of women in vulnerable positions in hotels that are licensed by and operated in the city. Action in this area will serve the city's strategic goal to maintain an inclusive and diverse community and enhance the well-being and safety of those who work and visit or live in Santa Monica. We also suggest that the city mandate comprehensive training for employees and managers in hotels to understand the laws and legal protections concerning the rights to safety and a workplace free from discrimination, as well as the important role that hotel staff play in identifying human trafficking. Finally, the city should continue to take steps by itself and in conjunction with the county to ensure that the hotel employers are following local, county, and state wage laws regarding unreasonable workloads and mandatory overtime. Santa Monica has historically been at the forefront of implementing fair employment practices, ensuring workers receive a more uniform living wage, and the safety of our community, and enhancing the rights of women. We urge the city to continue these commitments by implementing common sense legislation similar to cities such as Seattle, New York, Las Vegas, and Chicago, and to continue leading the way on gender equity and worker safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kazarian. Do we have any questions from members of the council? All right, then I think we'll move to the public comment.
Great.
I'm going to call a few names, and as Mayor Winter is instructed, please line up along the wall there. Barry Levy, Jerry Rubin, Reverend Ray Wong, Hugo Soto. And he has 2 minutes donated by Danielle Martin. Oh, no, he's donating 2 minutes. Sorry, the cards are in the wrong position. So, Mr. Soto, can you just raise your hand? Excellent, thank you. So we'll have Ms. Wilson for 2 minutes, for 4 minutes. Oh, it's getting late. Ms. Wilson for 4 minutes. Barry Levy? All right, so we'll start with you, Mr. Rubin.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much, council members. Jerry Rubin, Santa Monica. I must applaud the Commission on the Status of Women for this excellent report and these suggested worker mandates. I was a little distressed when I picked up today's Santa Monica Daily Press and saw this unfair ad that says, who's really calling the shots at City Hall? Like the unions, people for workers' rights. My gosh, I'm proud to live in a city that I believe is supportive not only of workers' rights, but groups that are promoting equality, groups that are promoting a clean environment, clean energy, sustainability, diversity, business community, a strong economy, alternative transportation, good tourism, things that are good for a city, including workers' rights. So I would expect nothing less of you than to be responsive to what is obviously what most people in the city support. Who wouldn't support fairness for our workers? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rubin. Reverend Wong, and while you're coming up there, after Ms. Wilson will be Imelda Keys.
Good evening, Council. Thank you so much for letting me share tonight. I'm Reverend Ray Huang, and I'm a Presbyterian pastor and also a faith-rooted organizer with CLUE, which is Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice. Tonight, I'm speaking on behalf of CLUE and 12 clergy and their congregations. Over the past decade, we have heard countless personal stories of the challenges that women face in the hospitality industry. And we are proud and excited to finally see needed comprehensive legislation address the concerns of our working women in the city. In this moment of our history, in this season when victims are finally beginning to speak up, we must listen to, respond to, and protect and empower these courageous voices. This is not only the politically right thing to do, it is the moral and ethical right thing to do. Tonight, I urge you to join our needed movement led by our own Santa Monica working women to stand with them against abuse and to draft an ordinance that can speak to their concerns. Our workers are not our invisible class. They are our faithful members of our community that make our city beautiful and vibrant. They are our brothers and sisters. They are part of our Santa Monica family. This is our opportunity, our historic moment, our council's historic moment, to shine and to lead our nation, our state, and our city, not in just with a voice, but in action, to stand with women against abuse, to join a movement that has been long past due, as we all know, led by working mothers and working women, for working mothers and working women. So please listen to the voices of our workers and protect and empower our loyal working women in our city by moving forward with this ordinance. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Wilson?
Good evening, Mayor Winter, council members, and staff. My name is Danielle Wilson, and I'm here on behalf of Unite Here Local 11. I'm so proud to be here tonight. This is a historic moment for Santa Monica, and your decision tonight will set precedent for the entire region. As an organization that represents primarily immigrant women who've been standing up to their employers for decades, we are encouraged to see the Me Too movement continue to sweep the nation. The fact that hospitality workers have become part of the national discourse is validating of the work we have been doing to draw attention to these issues for quite some time. Last year, alongside several celebrities known as the Silence Breakers, hotel workers Juana Melara and Sandra Pesqueda were honored as Time Magazine's Person of the Year. Unfortunately, Juana and Sandra are just two of many women with similar stories in the industry, and we believe that the vast majority of these stories go unreported. As the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission report observed, sexual assault is more likely to occur in circumstances like those of housekeepers where workers are physically isolated and there are no witnesses. In July 2016, Unite Here Local 1 in Chicago released a survey of nearly 500 women in the industry to better understand the scale and scope of the problems women face in the region. The statistics they gathered were staggering. For example, 49% of the housekeepers surveyed said they have had guests answer the door naked, expose themselves, or flash them. 56% of women who had experienced misconduct from a guest said they did not feel safe coming to work the next day. The precariousness of housekeeping work as it pertains to sexual assault is coupled with the onerous physical labor of the work. Housekeepers are required to clean 15 rooms or more in an 8-hour shift, which can add up to 4,500 square feet or more. These practices often leave workers exhausted at the end of their shifts, interfering with their ability to meet family and personal obligations. I urge you tonight to stay consistent with the Commission on the Status of Women's recommendation to direct staff to draft a policy that will protect hotel housekeepers from sexual assault, provide them with comprehensive training, and address overly burdensome workloads. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Keys? Isabella Keys? And after Ms. Keys will be James Whitaker.
Translating for her. Buenas noches, mi nombre es Ismela Reyes y he trabajado como recamarera y ahora como asistente de lavandería y pressing en el J.W. Marriott Le Merigot por 6 años.
Good evening, my name is Ismael Keys and I've worked as a room attendant and now as a laundry assistant at the J.W. Marriott Le Merigot for 6 years.
En los últimos 6 años mis compañeras de trabajo y yo hemos aguantado carga de trabajo excesivamente pesado.
In the last 6 years, my coworkers and I have dealt with excessive workload on the job.
Cuando los líderes de nuestra ciudad aprobaron el salario hace 2 años, nuestro hotel aumentó nuestra carga de trabajo, que de todas maneras trabajar de housekeeping es demasiado pesado.
So a couple of years ago when the city increased the minimum wage for workers, the company decided to add more workload to the already demanding work of a room attendant.
El trabajo es insoportable. Mis compañeras de trabajo ahora tienen que limpiar 15 habitaciones, balcones y refrigeradores en 4 horas.
So the work now is unbearable. My coworkers and I have to clean 15 rooms, balconies, and refrigerators in 8 hours of work.
Cuando estábamos limpiando de 13 o 14 habitaciones antes del aumento del salario digno, no balcones y no refrigeradores.
In the past, we were cleaning 13 or 14 rooms, but this is before the increase of the raise, the citywide raise, and we were not cleaning balconies and we were not cleaning refrigerators.
Es tan alentador que el Consejo de la Ciudad esté considerando tomar medidas acerca de este asunto en esta noche.
It gives me a lot of pleasure that this council and this city is considering taking measures regarding our workload this evening.
Confío en los líderes de nuestra ciudad que apoyen a los trabajadores en promover una ley que enfrenten las cargas de trabajo excesivamente.
So I have faith in our leaders of this wonderful city that they support the workers in pushing forward a ley that will deal with the excessive workload that we face.
Y protejan a las recamareras de los hoteles contra la agresiones sexuales, y que por favor que no pasen indignaciones las jóvenes en el trabajo pesado como yo lo he sufrido tanto.
And to also protect the room attendants of this hotel against sexual aggressions, many of which I have also been the victim of in my workplace.
Por favor, se los pido.
Please,
Gracias.
I ask you. Thank you.
Thank you. James Whitker.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and staff. Thank you. I'm a member of the Unitarian Universalist Community Church here in Santa Monica. I'm also a member of the larger interfaith community of clergy, workers, and lay leaders who continue to inspire me by coming together to stand up for the inherent worth and dignity of all people in our community, and also often to remind us of the worth and dignity of those who have been historically marginalized or silenced. I would simply this evening add my voice to what friends and neighbors here tonight have already testified to. We're clearly in a time in our country where we collectively have been awakened to the ongoing struggles and suffering of women that are perpetuated by systems of oppression, political, cultural, economic. I believe that we as individuals and we as government by the people have a responsibility to act on knowledge and truth that can no longer be denied, can no longer be buried, and to use the power that we have to work together for greater fairness and justice. In this case, we're hearing workers ask us, their community, for greater protections against exploitation and abuse that have gone on way too long, as we all know. Acting on behalf of workers, both to protect them from sexual harassment and assault in the workplace and to give them more humane conditions, is something that you as city government can do, and it's something that I think we all know will make a difference, as it has with many other issues in this community that I've seen during my time here and that I've been grateful for. I hope that Santa Monica will continue to be a leader on progressive issues that will help to inspire and show the way to other communities around our nation. So I thank you for your time and attention to this matter.
Thank you. Council, we have one late chit. Unless somebody objects, we'll hear it for 1 minute. That would be Bridie Roberts, who's been knitting away like Madame Lafarge in the...
Good evening, council members. It is good to see you and to be before you. I'm happy to share with you about my ministry journey. It continues to be one of a Methodist pastor serving churches, but also now as the new director of community organizing for Unite Here Local 11, which I'm excited to be here about. I want to express my support for this piece brought before you from the commission because it looks at the wholeness of the female experience inside the hotel, the parts that we know about and the parts that we are afraid to talk about. It's crucial to address the many ways women's labor is exploited in the hospitality industry. both through sexual assault and overly burdensome workloads, particularly in parts of the work inside hotels that is expressly gendered. The direction you give staff tonight will set the process moving forward, so it's important that you include all aspects of the policy that the Commission is recommending. The full experience of women must be recognized. The workloads of women, especially in housekeeping, are erroneous, they're body breaking, and they're soul damaging. I'll just conclude by saying it's been done in many cities around the country already, and Santa Monica has a unique opportunity to set a standard for the region that improves the lives of our workers, but also sets an example for how we believe women should be treated in our city in total. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, don't go away. Council Member Himmelrich has a question for you.
So you just said that this has been adopted in many cities across the country, right? So what cities have adopted sort of in terms of what you're asking us to do? What cities have adopted a comprehensive ordinance like this?
I think I'd like to bring Danielle up here, if that's possible, to help illuminate more. I know that we have legislative and also we have policies that have been legislated, and also comprehensive pieces that have been adopted through collective bargaining agreements in Seattle and Chicago and New York. And we're seeing they're a little bit different in each place, right? Our legislation may be even one step farther forward. But Danielle, do you want to come and add a little bit to this? Is that all right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Is that okay? No?
No?
If we can do it quickly, sure.
I just want the cities. I mean, I want models.
Yeah, I mean, so you can look at Chicago, you can look at Seattle, you can look at what's currently on the ballot in Long Beach and what will be on the ballot in 2020 in Rancho Palos Verdes. Again, they vary, but they have some of the core components that we've been looking at.
So is there any city in California that has adopted the policy that has all the aspects you're talking about?
Emeryville has both panic buttons and provisions around workload, does not have the training component that we're asking for.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that concludes the public input. Council members, the matters before us. Council Member Hemmerich, you're in the queue.
I think I was off, but I'm willing to start. So we have been talking about this for quite a while. I think it's a complicated issue, and I know it's coming to us in an unusual way. I think that it's really important to adopt these measures, particularly with respect to education and the panic buttons. I am concerned about aspects of the workload, but I think that we could do something that would help. I note that La Marigot is the most recently unionized hotel for housekeepers, and yet they haven't reached a contract yet. And I think it is important that the fact that we implemented a living wage has caused them to increase their work requirements, and I think that that we need to look at what our living wage does to and I don't even consider it a living wage, but let's say what raising the wage to $15 an hour, what impact it has on the workloads of workers, because I'm not sure we anticipated that it would cause their workloads to increase as a result of that. So that said, I'd like to hear what other people have to say.
Councilmember McEwen.
Well, I'm not so sure I agree that this came to us in some strange, unusual way. Many times, issues of sustainability and the environment have been brought to us by the Task Force on the Environment. So I think women coming to us talking about women's issues is entirely proper. I really was bothered by some of the allegations made in letters to the press that this was an end run or something. I thank the Commission on the Status of Women for bringing this to us. I thank the women who came here tonight. I'm just afraid you've come with such high hopes for history that we're going to have to, in a way, let you down, because we cannot pass an ordinance tonight. If we could, we might, but we can't. The process doesn't allow us to. What we can do is give direction to staff to draw up an ordinance and bring it back to us for a full hearing. And in fact, that's what I'd like to do. I would like to recommend that the council direct staff to prepare an ordinance based on all the elements mentioned in the Commission on the Status of Women letter to us, and looking at the other cities that were mentioned, including Emeryville, and I think there were a couple of others that were overtly mentioned.
Second.
I was going to say, when you recommend, that means it's a motion, right? Yes.
I move.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Davis.
So I don't think we need to gild the lily too much, but I do want to say that I think there are a couple of important issues here that have been raised, and I want to thank the Commission on the Status of Women for bringing them to our attention. I know they actually devoted several meetings and did a lot of independent investigation, so this was not something that was lightly entered into, nor were there recommendations sort of off the top of their head. They were well thought out, so I really do want to thank the Commission for bringing this to our attention. The thing that I really want to focus on is, I mean, it's obviously I support the motion being the seconder, but I think that it's really important for us to realize that this is part of a larger movement. As we heard, we know right now, and certainly recent events at the national political level as well as at the regional level and what we see in our culture have raised the issue that the role of women is being redefined in a positive way. Women are beginning to speak up for themselves. And so the bravery that it takes for women to come forward and tell their stories is finally being rewarded with action on the part of various people, perhaps not as much as we might like, but I would hope that Santa Monica would be on the right side of history on this one. So I just really want to express my gratitude not only to the Commission on the Status of Women, but to the women who came forward, spoke to them. I know there have been events where women have told their stories, and just the bravery that it takes to talk about things that are uncomfortable, that are embarrassing sometimes, and that can be employment affecting, especially to people whose grasp on their employment, may be less tenuous than they would like it to be. So, I think that this is an important matter for us going forward, and I look forward to seeing what staff brings back.
Mr. Cole?
A couple of things. The provisions outlined in the Commission's recommendations include some concerns that would require enforcement. And we're not set up yet to enforce those kind of rules. In fact, we just heard this evening a report on how we have worked with the county to enforce a set of rules. I note that in Oakland, a similar package has been put on the November ballot that would set up a new department in the city of Oakland strictly for workers enforcement. So this is a pretty significant set of issues that lie underneath these laudatory recommendations, because we can pass laws all day and all night, and then of course the real question is, will they be enforced and how will they be enforced? Rather than bringing back an ordinance, I wonder whether this really ought not to be the subject of a study session, so that we can bring back a range of provisions and issues for the council to resolve. I think these recommendations are pretty general for us to come back with a fully fleshed out ordinance. And it'd be a shame if we brought back an ordinance and then you had to send us back to start over again if we missed either your intent or didn't have sufficient public comment to fully vet these issues.
That's a suggestion for the maker and the seconder of the motion.
As the maker of the motion, I'd like to keep the motion the way it is, and if there are enforcement issues that need to be discussed, we can have a study session on that, but I don't want to put off this ordinance.
I think as the seconder, when we have these sorts of things brought back for first reading, it sort of develops into a study session in any event. I understand there may be enforcement problems. I'm very sympathetic to that, and I guess my sense is that and maybe that's a friendly amendment, is for staff to give some thought as to how we might in fact enforce these rules if we in fact adopt such an ordinance. And it might be sort of part of the general presentation. It wasn't specifically mentioned in the letter we got from the Commission on the Status of Women, but I think if there are going to be enforcement issues, they ought to get a full hearing. So I'd like to hear about them when staff comes back, if that's all right with the maker. So.
Well, I want to express significant reservations with that approach. It's, of course, the council's choice, 100%, but we'll be putting a fair amount of work on the staff side, on the city manager's side, and on the city attorney's side to hammer out an ordinance based upon all of these various models. And we'll have to have a section in that ordinance that says how it's going to be enforced. We can't give you 5 or 6 different options in an ordinance. We're going to give you one option and then alternatives. And if there's alternatives, you're going to send us back to the drawing board. So I understand the urgency. We got plenty on our plate. This council has put us in the forefront of restaurant plastic packaging, challenging Airbnb and other the scooter mobility model. You know, we're on the cutting edge of these things, and there are a number of ballot issues on the ballot in literally 2 weeks. But I don't know any California laws of cities of our size that have actually adopted this. So we're going to be breaking new ground. And if you want us to break new ground, I really do suggest strongly that you give us the opportunity to vet what it is that we're breaking new ground, rather than pass an ordinance and then try to figure out how we enforce it later on.
Does the city attorney have an opinion? Is it possible an ordinance like this could rely, primarily on the right of private action rather than creating a new bureaucratic arm of the city?
My first thought is that we love drafting on the dais. We obviously will follow council's wishes here. I think that what we have in front of us obviously is not an ordinance. I am aware of Chicago and some other things. There will be sample language for some of this, but not all of it. Some will be more complicated than others. I think a study session would be useful. I understand the desire not to slow things down. So if the direction is to bring back an ordinance, we will do what we can to bring back an ordinance with options. If staff reviews things and sees problems, then we will try to give you as few choices as reasonably reflect what is here and staff judgment as to the best path forward. The more complicated questions of budget for enforcement and all of those sorts of things obviously are outside of my prerogative, and those things are harder. That's not just a matter of a couple of choices in language. That's a question of whether we're able to study various alternatives sufficiently to understand all of the policy implications. All of which is to say, study session gives you more information, an ordinance gives you choices on the dais, and we'll follow your direction.
Well, what about my question about whether something like this can be enforced primarily through the right of private action rather than through city staff?
We can look at enforcement options. I'm more familiar with right of private action in federal law than I am in our municipal code. We obviously do have some of it. We can look at that. We can also look at a contract with the county similar to the wage enforcement. So again, we will try to get you down to no more than an ordinance and a couple of options, so that we don't end up having a study session in the name of the ordinance. But yes, we will look at private action, and we can also look at a contract with the county and other enforcement mechanisms.
Councilmember Vasquez.
I'm supportive of it, but I'm also sensitive to the issue of, all the intricacies that are in this particular recommendation, I guess, coming forward from the commission. And I guess I would be satisfied if it came back with, it seems like the primary thing here is the panic button. When you get into the workload, I think that's an issue that, and even in talking to some of the labor folks, that's something that's negotiated or could potentially be negotiated by the contracts moving forward. So on that one, I'd be kind of open to hear from staff and I guess the legal side, because how do you enforce something like that moving forward? But I'd like to see some options. Like I think what I'm hearing from staff is that they would come back with some options. But I don't think we need to belabor the point and get into something that's very heavily intense in terms of your workload. For me, I think the panic button seems to be the number one thing.
So I'm wholly supportive of what's before us and the direction we're likely to go this evening. I would prefer to do a study session because I understand that we're breaking new ground and it makes sense to try to take a look at what other cities have done or will be doing. And I'm particularly sensitive to the question of how a law like this is enforced in regards to making sure the workloads are not burdensome. I'm not going to stand on principle if it's the will of the council to just go get that ordinance come back to us whenever is humanly possible given the demands on city staff in multiple areas, but I personally prefer a study session. Councilmember O'Connor.
I too prefer the study session, and thinking about it, if it could be we get slowed down if it comes back with an ordinance that ends up being too narrow, and then we have to send staff back to the drawing board. So I just think it makes more sense to let's do this in terms of let's do the study session. Let's figure out what we learned from the study session about what we can enact. Maybe it's something we can enact immediately, and maybe there's some stage things. Maybe there's some things we could be doing to figure out how to raise the funds needed for enforcement. So I think part of that could be part of the study session. So I'd prefer that way too. To move us forward. We want to keep moving forward and want to do it as quickly as possible. But again, to have a good understanding of what are the kinds of things we can do immediately, what are the ones that are more problematic, and if they're more problematic, we'll figure a way to solve that and how to approach it. So I guess I'll make that as a substitute motion.
I'll second that we do a study session and that delivers an invoice thereafter. So I guess, seeing no further discussion, we'll have a roll call vote on the substitute motion, which is to move forward with a recommendation of the Commission of the Status of Women regarding protections for hotel workers, but to do so first with a study session, which is followed by a draft ordinance. Let's have a roll call vote.
Councilmember McCune?
No.
Councilmember Vasquez?
No on that.
Councilmember Himmerich?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
No.
Councilmember O'Connor?
Yes.
Mayor Winter?
Yes, so the substitute motion fails. So the motion on the floor is to direct staff to prepare an ordinance with options in certain areas, particularly with regarding to enforcement of workloads, and following on the request from the Commission of the Status of Women regarding protections for hotel workers. So we'll have a roll call vote on that.
Councilmember O'Connor?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Himmerich?
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilmember McCune?
Yes.
And Mayor Winter?
Yes, so that passes unanimously, and thank you for the participation of everybody here. And
next we'll go to item 13A, which is appointment to one unscheduled vacancy on the Rec and Park Commission for a term ending June 30th, 2020. And you have one request to speak.
so council members, normally we do this with only when we have 7 members, but we've been endeavoring to do this for a while, and Mayor Pro Tem will have to back me up on this, but she received a text from Council Member O'Day saying he was fine with us going ahead without him this evening. Our other option would be so we can finally get these things done, is to roll these 13 items over into a 5-item in our next agenda. But I can tell you, November is the cruelest month. We got really long meetings in November. So unless anyone objects, I think we ought to give these appointments a shot with the 6 of us, and we wind up with a 3-3 tie, then we can roll them over into the next meetings and start them early. Does anybody object to the idea of giving this a shot?
I think it's a bad idea on principle, given that we've always been very careful to have a full council on appointments. but I think I'm outnumbered, so.
No, let's hear from everybody. Those are the two options.
Well, I just want to point out that actually I've done exactly what Councilmember Modé did one time when I had to miss a meeting and there was an issue with appointments, I believe, to the Arts Commission, and I missed those appointments and said it was okay. So it's not completely unprecedented.
I have a question, because since I've been on the council, I have been told that we only do it with everyone here, and I've never understood. That's not a rule. It's a tradition. Is that right?
Yeah, it's customary practice. Yeah, it's a courtesy thing.
But it's a courtesy to the missing council member who, if the missing council member says, fine, go ahead. So I think we ought to move forward.
I mean, it's only 10:19.
Right, it's so early. And
Let's
the
give it a
bars are
shot
all
and see if there's a
closed, so what's-
consensus. There may not be a consensus, yeah.
All right, well, let's give it a shot.
So
Understand.
before we start, we have one speaker. It's
Item
Mary-
13A?
Yeah, Mary Kaplan.
Marcy Kaplan.
Oh, Marcy, sorry.
Hi, thank you, Mayor Winter and City Council members. My name is Marcy Kaplan, and I've been a Santa Monica resident for 12 years, and I'm a working mother of 2 small children. I'm here tonight to ask for your nomination and vote for the Recreation and Parks Commission vacant seat. I believe the perspective of Santa Monica children and youth need to be heard on the Recreation and Parks Commission and are integral to maintaining the safety and accessibility of our parks as well as recreation programming. I spend 6 to 10 hours in Santa Monica parks every week with my family, and I'm familiar with the different city parks where improvements are needed and where programs and park planning has been successful. I see firsthand what kind of play equipment isn't utilized, where shade would be best placed in park, and what type of programming community members want to see. And most importantly, what are the steps that can be taken to further maintain the safety of our children and other park users? Finally, serving on the commission would allow me to mobilize the large network of families I'm connected to in Santa Monica and engage them in the future planning and maintenance of our parks. And I have actively begun doing this recently by working together with city staff to identify opportunities to engage families in park activations. I'm confident that by serving on the Recs and Parks Commission, I could help amplify the voices of children and families. With over 15 years of experience working together with the public, private, and charitable sectors, I've developed leadership skills, learned how to prioritize goals, outline deliverables, maximize resources, and strengthen strategic partnerships. I hold a Master's of Public Policy from UCLA and a BA in Psychology from UC Santa Barbara. I'm confident that my skill set has well equipped me to effectively serve on the Recreation and Parks Commission, and I hope I can count on your vote. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Kaplan. So we'll open the floor up to nominations for the unscheduled vacancy to the Recreation and Parks Commission.
I nominate Marcy Kaplan.
I nominate Derek Devermont.
All right, seeing no other nominations, let's vote.
Councilmember McCune,
Kaplan.
Councilmember Vasquez,
Devermont.
Councilmember Himmelrich,
Devermont.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis, Councilmember O'Connor,
Kaplan, so we're going
and
to...
Mayor Winter.
Yeah, we still...
Well, this is the problem with having 6. I will vote for Devermont. It's tied. Let's give it another try. Let's have some nominations again.
All right, I nominate Marcy Kaplan.
Any other nominations?
I gave it a shot.
All right. Shall we move Kaplan by acclamation?
Yes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Congratulations, Ms. Kaplan. Do us proud.
Okay, next we have 13B. It's appointment to one unscheduled vacancy, and this is for the Arts Commission, term ending June 2020. You have no request to speak for that one.
Phil Brock.
Any other other nominations? I guess we'll try by acclamation then. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Very good.
Okay, and next we have appointment to one for the social services, and the term, I'm correcting, the term is supposed to be June 30, 2020, not 2022. And you have no request to speak on that.
How about some nominations?
I nominate Eric Stoff.
I nominate Ryan Haas.
Any other nominations?
Any other nominations? All right, let's see who wants to vote for Stoff, who wants to vote for Haas.
Okay, Councilmember McKeown,
Stoff.
Councilmember Vasquez,
Haas.
Councilmember Himmelrich,
Haas.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis,
Stoff.
Councilmember O'Connor,
Stoff.
and Mayor Winter.
Stoff. So we actually,
All right.
Eric
So, and I
Stoff
will
is appointed to the
change-
commission.
I will change my vote to Stoff to make it
And
unanimous.
Mr. Stoff is appointed to the Social Services Commission by a vote of 6-0. And now, can the clerk call item 13D, please?
13D is request of Councilmember McKeown, Santa Monica's Director on the Board of Clean Energy Alliance of Southern California, to authorize use of council travel funds to attend the Community Choice Energy Summit in San Francisco, November 28th through the 30th. And you have no request to speak.
So as the mayor jokingly pointed out earlier, when I attend the Community Power Alliance meetings in downtown Los Angeles and take a 35-cent senior off-peak Expo line trip, I don't charge that to the city. This, however, is a meeting happening in San Francisco. The last one of these I went to was probably the most intense learning experience of any conference I've gone to, because this is other communities that have gone through the community choice aggregation process. Usually we're the community that's been there before, done that, and are telling other people how we did it. This is a chance to learn from others who've gone before us. So I would request the permission of the council to use my council travel funds to attend this conference in San Francisco.
I'll move it.
Second.
Thank you.
We're spending money, so we better have a roll call vote.
Councilmember O'Connor?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Himmelrich?
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilmember McKeown?
Yes.
And Mayor Winter.
Yes. So we expect you to come back smarter.
Next, we have 14, which is public input. Public comment is permitted only items on the agenda, not on the agenda, that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. State law prohibits that the city council from taking any action on the items listed on the agenda, including issues raised under this agenda item, and you have 3 requests to speak.
All right, we'll hear first from Denise Spartan, then Art Casillas, and then Harvey Eder.
Good evening. Since the election is coming, please allow me to encourage everyone to see how important term limits are. On bonds for the state and local governments, as well as the blank check for SMC, the real question here has to be, are these entities living beyond their means, incurring massive amounts of debt on the backs of the residents? And where's the accountability for these funds? I mean, Rick Cole sits up there and says how transparent the city is, right? For the gas tax, they said the same thing about the roads and bridges last time. Yet we got metro trains, and here in Santa Monica, bike routes to schools. And now we're getting the same sales pitch for roads and bridges. On rent control, it sounds like a good idea, but since the money is going to the city, we have to worry if it will be going to another city department with more overpaid city staff, instead of to the people who really need the help. Now, I'd have to touch on when I said in closed session earlier, considering my early 4:30 closed session presentation from the last city council meeting was cut out of the YouTube replay. Starting with the city fighting the district voting, which is technically a conflict of interest for you at a cost of $7 to $10 million by the end of the year to the residents. Or let's go back to Baird and Driscoll Community Planning. Oh yeah, the city calls them Cornerstone Partnership or Silicon Valley Community Foundation when they had contracts with the city. And of course, Barbara Collins from the city's housing authority is the wife of Jeffrey Baird of Baird and Driscoll. Nepotism is alive and well here. Finally, throw in Pam O'Connor's $1 million settlement and the fact her city siphon and travel expenses are the only reason she's running now. Put it all together, and it really makes you wonder who's going to pay the residents back for your questionable and criminal actions. Thank you.
Mr. Casillas.
Evening, Art Casillas. Put a stop to crime. Fire City Manager Rick Cole and vote out his criminal co-conspirators McEwen, Himmelrich, and O'Connor. Ex-Department of Justice Attorney Santa Monica City Elaine Dilge does nothing. Police are being paid high salaries, overtime benefits, and saying nothing of which deprives us of our right to equal protection and our civil rights. Why? In Pacific Coast Business Times, Tom Bronzini, Friday, September 28, 2012, comments off on Speak Out after resigning as city manager, and Rick Cole in Ventura as he was about to be voted out. Quote, our challenge today is to reclaim the high ground and restore public service as honorable calling, and said, nothing is more urgent than to actively resist this destructive, mindless, and American civil and political life, end of quote. Then why did you choose to sell us out and yourself out in another attempt to restore your legacy, Tricky Ricky? You hired new police chief Renan once again to make a plan on Beach, Promenade, and Palisades Park cleanup for tourists. Then you store homeless and druggies and rapists at Christine Reed Park. When homeless killer Ramon Escobar was captured, police took credit, but it was community service officer who spotted him, not police. Now in child molestation charges in Santa Monica Daily Press, Eric Uller, city says he was a PAL volunteer when he has worked for city and mainly police department for about 25 years. Was this a nepotism hire? Why are you allowing enabling drug sales and use of gunfire and shooting behind my 70-year-old brother's house coming from rent-control apartments on Cloverfield Boulevard? This terrorist threat is an attempt to shut me up, isn't it? There are only two races, to go to heaven or the race to go to hell. Thank you.
Mr. Eder?
Hello there. I want to talk about several things, and I don't know what to say. Well, homelessness. It's a problem. You can use vouchers to buy a place. Section 8 vouchers. Since 2000, it's been federal law. The city can choose whether to have both or just one. So I suggest that the city at least have both, at least have the other option of home ownership, which LA has, San Bernardino County and Riverside. Anyway, there's an RFO for the CPA for 600 megawatts of solar renewables and storage. I went to the board meeting on the 4th, was told that proposals would be due on the 9th of November. I tried to get the RFO information from the site, this outfit, TINS. Anyway, could not get it until the 21st. The proposals, we were then told, were due first on the 15th. This whole process should be changed. More time should be added. Those that had it ready and in on the 15th were in the in crowd, and I question this process. This is very important with public power. And also the terms and conditions, if you don't agree to them, and you're giving information to this TINS outfit, and it's competitive, and you don't know who these people are, and they don't do just public power. Anyway, that's a structural problem. We've got this stuff with climate change now. What we're talking about is murder. You know, there's going to be so many deaths. We got this with air pollution, and now we got multiples of it with extinction of our species and others. And this is murder, and Public Solar Power Commission has litigated, and we're considering that here,
Thank you, Mr.
etc.
So that concludes the public input part of the agenda. Does someone have an adjournment in the memory of Jack Casey?
I have that here. So, Council, it is with sadness tonight that we adjourn our meeting in memory of longtime Olympic High School teacher Jack Casey. Jack changed the lives of many Challenge Santa Monica students over his 30 years of teaching not only English and technology, but life skills. Jack Casey was born in Brooklyn and had a Jesuit education at both New York's famed Fordham Prep and eventually Loyola Marymount here in L.A., where he earned his master's in education. Jack also attended what is now CSUN for his bachelor's. Jack was a man of mixed interests. He served in Vietnam, where he was exposed to Agent Orange, but he became a man of great inner peace. Jack had his rebel days as an avid motorcycle rider, but he spent many hours tending his garden. Along with his work at Olympic High School, Jack for many years also taught adult school. Jack was a sports fan, actually the Boston Red Sox, I believe, but above all a fan of his wife Deirdre, who survives him along with a sister, Margaret, and two brothers, James and Austin. Jack's legacy is all over Santa Monica in the persons of those students he mentored at Olympic High School. Jack will be missed by them along with his family and friends. Jack Casey was 72 when he died on October 10th. In keeping with Jack's wishes, there will be no service.
All right, thank you for that, council member. And it is with great sadness that we adjourn this council meeting in memory of Wayne Harding, a lifelong Santa Monica resident, philanthropist, and business owner. Wayne was born in Santa Monica on September 18th, 1926. Attended Santa Monica Public Schools, including Santa Monica High School, where he excelled in football and baseball and was student body president. After graduating from Samo High in February 1945, Wayne enlisted in the United States Merchant Marine, serving on vessels in both the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans during the last months of World War II. Following the war, Wayne attended Santa Monica College and UCLA, where he played first base and was later inducted into the UCLA Baseball Hall of Fame in 1998. After college, Wayne was a local business owner. He owned Santa Monica Ford for over 40 years, working well into his 70s. He was also a servant to his community, having served as the president of the Santa Monica Chamber of Commerce, on the board of directors of the Santa Monica UCLA Medical Center, and a lifelong board member of the Santa Monica Boys and Girls Club. Wayne is survived by his wife of nearly 72 years and high school sweetheart Dixie, sons Larry, Chris, and Mark, 10 grandchildren, and 12 great-grandchildren. Speaking on behalf of the entire community, we convey to his family our deepest condolences. If there are no other adjournments, then we are concluding this meeting, and we'll be back, is it November 9th? Is anybody off the top of their head? Is that right? November 9th. No?
No, the 6th is
Six?
election day, so it must be the 6th.
It must be the 13th, November 13th, a week after election. Yeah. I'll be here Friday night.
Yeah.
I got nothing better to do. All right, November 13th. Thanks.